I will call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging we are in Treaty 1 territory and a traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Neil Harden. I am chairing today's panel. With me is Ron Merrick to my left and Susan Gifford to my far left. The assessor today is Merrick Froelich and the recording secretary is Michelle Neepin. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements of the applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised a comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that we mail to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information how to do so will include in the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side would have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. So can you do the swearing in, Michelle?
Is it? Yeah. I swear.
Okay. Can you state your full name, please?
Merrick Froelich.
You swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Bradford Scott Borski.
You swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so the first property on the agenda today is 65 Paramount Road, and the matter is assessed value. So you can proceed, Mr. Froelich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I start off, I just want to give us a general overview with regard to the City of Winnipeg's position with regards to...
Could you read the file and roll?
For sure thing. Okay, no problem. File number is 19-2992. Roll number is 14-0627. 20100. Property that we're looking at is 65 Paramount, and the assessed value that we have is $24,557,000.
Okay.
For the 2020 assessment cycle, what we've done is we've read the 5% management fee from our basic income statement model. The reason why we've done this is, as many of you know, there are a lot of leases out there, but we base our leases on a triple net basis. So when we fill out a lease on a triple net basis, we're under the presumption that the net paid is mindful of all the expenses. The additional expenses are paid for as well. So what you'll have is you will have a base rent of say $10 per se, and there'll be common expenses that are associated with them. So the tenants are responsible for all the electrical, all the insurance, the hydro, all those different bills that end up taking place. So if you look at our income and expense mailer that we send out every year, in the middle section it's annual expenses. And so we have general administration, insurance, property administration, hydro, security, maintenance. We go through the whole thing, and it comes up with the net operating income. On the far right-hand side here, and sometimes the data we get is inconsistent, and we understand that, and no system's perfect, but there's general administrative recoveries, utilities maintenance recoveries, and property tax recoveries. So everything that we get here in a perfect world should be net. So when we create a net rent, it is a net because we're under the assumption that the money paid that's given out is on a triple net basis. So that's why in our analysis, we eliminated the 5% management fee, because it was essentially double dipping. If it's an expense in the middle portion and it's recovered here, then it's neutral. So that's why when in the past, when we've taken off that 5% management fee, we were essentially double dipping because it's paid for on one side, it's recovered on the other side, and by us taking an additional 5% off, we felt we were double dipping. So during the analysis of the entire 27 income and expense mailer to create the 2020 roll, we've compiled tons of data, we followed IAAO standards, and we feel comfortable with removing the 5% management fee. So we have lots of information. You guys have heard all the board orders and everything like that. We've been mindful of the fact with regards to tenant inducements, commissions, things that people have done to justify the 5% management expenses. We disagree with that. And in a nutshell, that's just a quick overview of why we've gone to removing the 5% management fee off the roll for the 2020 assessment period.
Okay.
Okay. Moving forward. What we have here, 65 Paramount. Buildings were built throughout 1974 to 2004. Average wall height is 22 feet. We have a land area of 719,471, and we have a leasable area of 318,576, and we would like the assessment to be confirmed. So what we have here, this property is like a flexible warehouse, and it has a variety of properties on this building here. So if you're seeing it on page 2 and page 3, you're going to see all the different buildings of it. You know, top portion of 2, there's A, bottom portion is building B. In the middle picture on page 3, you can see D, and you can see all the different office spaces here. And as some of you may or may not know, I used to work in office, and I haven't had the opportunity to inspect a lot of these properties, and actually none of these on the docket I actually have inspected, other than driving by. What you'll see on page 4 is you'll see where it's located at. So it's located on, I need to get the glasses up. It is located, I do believe, just north of Inkster. Yeah, between Inkster and Keewatin. And then you'll see the series of buildings that are there. And there's the layout on page 4. Property owner has been compliant and finished in completing out their income and expense mailers. So we're always happy with that. You know, what I've done is I've just done a print screen summary of these. You can see that on page 4, 5, and 6. In 2003, there was a sworn value sale for this, where there's change of ownership of $9.5 million. Here we have subject property leases here that are listed here. So you're seeing a range of leases here from the subject property from $525 at its lowest to a high of $650. And on page 8, you'll see our income stream summary. So as you can see here, it's a large unit, 318,000 square feet. The blended rate that we've used for this property is $5.84. We have used a vacancy loss of 3.5%. Effective gross income of $1,796,716. Expenses at 2%. Shortfall at $375. To come up with a net operating income of $1,718,969. We're using a cap rate of 7% for this property. And then if you reference on page 10, this would be a multi-tenanted building. And we're within the range of between multi-tenanted, even if we consider it to be a B, 6.34 to 7.8, so we're well within our range with our 7% cap rate. What I've done here for comparables is I've chosen comparables and just some of the other. I've taken comparables that are located in the neighborhood. I've taken ones from Paramount, on Church, Plymouth, Keewatin, all showing a range of rents from $5.50 to $7. So on page 10, I referenced the general cap rate study that we had. The individual cap rates that we've used, we've showed a range of individual cap rates on the bottom of page 11 for industrial. The range is from 4.97% to 8%. So we are within the range by using the 7%. Non-recoverable expense sampling. This is just a quick overview of why you use the 2% of the non-recoverables. In our analysis, and one of these are Paramount Road at 2.67%. And then we got a range of non-recoverable expenses ranging from 0.036 to 3.82. And that concludes my presentation.
Any questions, Mr. Boardroom?
I do have a few. The subject property is a rental property, right?
That is correct.
And it is substantial in size, right? And there are a large number of rental units within it, yes?
Yep.
And it's the department's position that we should ignore the actual leasing activity and the rents in place within this property?
It's not, what we do is we don't do site-specific evaluations at the model. We do a model-generated assessment.
I understand that that's for the model, but we're here on appeal, and on appeal you'll agree that it's a site-specific basis, yes?
Yes.
And you agree with me that the rents that are achieved in this property, the tenant is obligated to pay, correct? Contractually obligated to pay.
That is correct.
And the landlord is contractually obligated, the owner is contractually obligated to receive those rents and no more, correct?
Thank you. Well, that is true, but what we do is when we look at our valuation, we're always looking at the face rents that they provide us on the income and expense mailers, not the actual rent, deducting leasing commissions and tenant inducements and everything like that.
And so the rents in place, and these premises are on a large net basis, correct?
Yep.
And so those are the rents that the owner would be obligated to receive, not able to receive more than that, right? Contractually?
Yes.
And any purchaser would similarly be held to those contractual obligations, right?
That is true.
Okay. So let's turn, I apologize, there we go. On your page 10, this is the table describing the process for the determining or the ranges for the model rents generated by the city, yes?
Yes, but before you finish this question here, Mr. Borgstrom, what we have here is like, when we looked at on page 7, the subject property leases here, we did show a range of leases that were showing, we're using $5.84, and we're showing a range of leases from $6.25 to $6.50. And so, by us using $5.84, we're probably being pretty reflective of being close to what we have for a model generated rent here.
Okay.
Sorry.
You'll also agree that some of the rents within this property are lower than the range you've given?
Yep.
Yes?
Yep, for sure. And we also agree with you that some of the leases are a lot are 10 years away from the reference date.
And with step-ups, yes?
Well, yeah.
You're not
Sometimes it says step-up rate leases, because during my analysis of this, when I was looking at what you put here on paper and what's actually been placed on the mailers, the rents haven't changed over 10 years. So they may be step-up rate leases, but when I look at the actual data, I didn't see that to be the case.
Okay. So let's get back to my question,
Yep.
page 10. And this is the table that the city provides showing the range of their model rates, right?
That is correct.
And you also report the ranges for brokers' market reports, correct?
Yep.
And as we look at the second paragraph from the top, the paragraph says for the 2020 general assessment, capitalization rates were derived from model-generated estimates of net operating income. That means that the city is not using actual rents, but they're using model rents that are applied, correct?
No, what we're doing is when we're doing our caps rate study, we're using actuals, and then once we're using the actuals, we're taking that data and then using it into the model.
Okay, let me turn you back to the second paragraph. That's not what it says here, correct?
Yeah.
So the second paragraph actually says the capitalization rates were derived from model-generated estimates of net operating incomes, right?
Yeah, but our process
Isn't
is,
that an indication that on a property-specific basis, the department is not utilizing the actual rents generated by those?
because we're not doing a site-specific evaluation.
I understand that, but you'll agree with me that those are not actual rents for each property.
We were looking at all the rents that are used from the entire region to come up with a model.
I take that as a yes.
What we're doing is we're not doing a site-specific evaluation here. It's impossible to do that.
And so the sales that were used, the department uses all sales, correct?
No, we don't use all sales.
No, which sales do you exclude?
Well, we'll exclude, if we don't have good data, there's a variety of reasons that we won't include sales in analysis for a cap rate study.
If
If we're not able to do a 3-year stabilization in some circumstances, that won't be the case too.
Let me turn you back to the second paragraph. Doesn't say anywhere in here about a 3-year stabilization, about site-specific. What it talks about here in the second paragraph, this is the city's information, right? And it says this very same thing within the assessment guidelines, right? Yes?
Yes, well, because we do a condensed version. What we do a condensed version, Mr. Borgstrom, it's just like when we do a cap rate study and you question us on why we don't provide enough information. It's because we're trying to make this a time-efficient process.
So let me take you again back to the second paragraph. Capitalization rates were derived from model-generated estimates of the net operating income, not the actual incomes, correct?
That is correct. I think the board is well
And so
familiar with our
let's turn
process.
back, and so if we're using the estimates, the model-generated estimates of the net operating incomes, the model will use the model-generated estimates for all properties, all sales, correct?
Well, generically speaking, yes.
And so those sales would necessarily then include owner-occupied properties, correct?
That is correct.
And owner-occupied properties don't generate income, right?
No, but we,
But the department applies the model-generated rents.
well, we'll look at, we'll look at how the sales price was derived for the property. And so we'll look at market indicators to come up with that.
And so those sales would also necessarily include properties that were vacant at time of sale, right?
Well, with regards to vacant properties, yeah, it's just because a property is vacant at time of sale doesn't state that there isn't good sales data just shortly after the vacancy that would take place. A perfect example of that would be on Park Lane, whereby we had well, you started it.
Let me stop you
Let me
there and
finish.
just ensure that we're talking about the question that I've asked. Okay? The model would utilize sales to estimate the model-generated income on vacant properties, correct?
Say that again, please.
The model would utilize sales of vacant properties and estimate the model-generated net operating income for those properties.
How would we create an income, if a property is vacated, how would an income be generated?
Now, if we look at your page 2, capitalization rates were derived from model-generated estimates of net operating income. That's how they would do it, right?
But we look at the history of how the building was produced. Just because there's a short-term vacancy, and if there's sales that takes place afterwards, doesn't mean that this income, this property is not worth anything, and then you gotta look at the analysis for that.
Let's take you over to your page 11. Yes?
Yep.
The bottom of the page are 4 industrial properties
Yep.
for which the department has done cap rate extraction, correct?
That is correct.
And if we take a look at the second paragraph again, at the top of the page, the net operating income for these sales has been developed through stabilizing owner-reported income and expense information, correct?
Yes.
And the capitalization rates have been derived by dividing the property's net operating income by its sale price.
Yep.
You agree with that?
That's what's in the textbook.
This is what's on your page 11.
Yep.
You agree with that?
And it's also in the textbook.
And those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, did you, want to question him at all on the 5% issue?
No, I'll do it with my, through ours.
Okay, that's fine. Fair enough. I just didn't want to have you admit something. Okay, now that I'm anxious to hear that. Okay, Mr. Merritt, questions of the assessor?
Yeah, Mr. Frolick. How do you classify this, subject property?
Well, what we do is,
Is it like warehouse, office?
well, it's defined as being a flex warehouse from an income
Yeah.
production, so it's a mixture of office space and warehouse. So when you look at these buildings here, there's a component of it which is warehouse and there's a component which is office. So I can't make a standardized statement
Okay.
because every building's different and every section's different.
But I guess in looking at the square footage of it and the rate per square foot for gross income, I mean, you know, I think the rate is $5.84.
Yep.
And so that would be almost like warehouse. It's not office space really.
Yeah, and so and in that regards, we're probably being a bit generous because some buildings may have more of an office component than a warehouse component.
So, you're using a cap rate of 7%.
Yep.
Okay, so, in looking through, page 10,
Yep.
I look under the city of Winnipeg,
Yep.
and probably classified as industrial,
Yep.
and the percentile, the 80th, points to a higher cap rate of 7.8.
Mhm.
So why are you using a 7%?
Well, because the low would be 5.5. So if you're looking at in between, you know, if you're looking at in between, it's closer to the 5.5 than it's higher than the 9.8. But then we're going to look at what the location is, right? It's in a good location. Northwest Inkster Industrial Park is a good location. Vacancies, you know, reasonably low in that area. And so when we looked at our analysis, we felt that 7% was fair.
So when I look at page 11 and extracting a cap rate, the only one that I would say would be similar to the subject would be the, you know, the higher sale price one, which has a cap rate of 5%.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So 5% to 7% is a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and the nature of, you know, the nature of the Waverly property is a bit different, you know what I mean? The Waverly property would be defined as being superior to the one on Inkster Industrial Park, because the southwest quadrant of the city of Winnipeg is quite a desirable location right now. But well, I say that, the Inkster Industrial Park is a very strong industrial park as well.
So, on page 11, whose cap rate evidence is this?
This is ours,
Ours?
the city of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, you know, I guess the extraction from the model, you know, spit out the 7% cap rate, but I can't see it on this page,
Well,
page 11.
it shows a range. And the key is there's a range of cap rates from 5% to
Yeah,
8%.
but, you know, I mean, you're after, you know, a cap rate for the subject property, so wouldn't you be more defined or try to narrow, you know, or get a range,
Well-
and a closer range?
Well, we're within 3 percentage points of each other from like 5 to 8%. So that's a pretty tight range.
It's a tight range, but there's a difference in value.
Yeah, of course, and I understand that, but you know, the point is, it's just, you know, we have this here, and then we also have the data that's provided us by the Colliers, by the CB Richard Ellis, and the Cushman Wakefields
Okay.
to show that we're within the range. So, you know,
Okay, I thank you, Mr. Frolick. Thank you.
Susan?
The 1100 Waverly Street one, do you have any more data on that particular sale?
in terms of, well, I know it was reported as being a good sale in the Colliers report, stating that they had used it as being market evidence of being a strong property. What are you looking for specifically?
Well, I'm just looking at the age of it, and the difference in the cap rate is
Yeah,
When you look at the age of the building,
okay. Well, there's a couple things that you gotta look at here, right? So when we're looking at the age of the building at Waverly, 1100 Waverly, right? 1974. So it's almost identical in terms of the age to the subject property that we're looking at here, right? Because the original building was built in 1974, and if I,
but what I'm saying is it's such a, you're saying 7%, yet that one is sitting at almost 5%. And you're saying the difference is because it's in the southwest.
Southwest, and the dynamics of it is a bit different as well. The rents that are derived from 1100 Waverly are significantly higher than the rents that are derived from the subject property, which leads to the cap rate being much lower.
Is there office space in the, is it industrial/office at Waverly?
Well, a couple things to look at. Waverly is a high traffic, high volume, great exposure. Paramount's not. So if you're looking at a Paramount property, and if you're looking at a Waverly property, if you're building a brand new business, which would be more desirable? So that would be a part of the reason
We're
why.
talking about an existing business, not a brand new business.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying though, but if you're looking at a property or you're looking at vacant land, if you had a choice between starting a brand new business, what would be a better business to have it on Paramount?
So you're saying the difference is due to the area alone?
It's a combination of things. We're looking, and everything that we do in our environment is always based on rents, always based on vacancy, always
Yeah,
based
I
on cap
understand
rates.
that.
And so when we're looking at this sale here, so you're looking at a situation where, buildings close to the same age.
Do you
So
know anything more about 1100 Waverly? Is it office
Higher rent.
retail? Is it office retail, office industrial?
there's a mixed use, similar to the flex warehouse that we have here, because there's a warehouse component of it, and there's also an office component of it here. There's also some yoga studios
So when
here.
they do the model, is that what they're looking for when they're doing cap rates, is a similar mixed use?
Well, this is a mixed use in one variety. The Waverly property is a mixed use in another variety.
What kind of variety?
Well, because there's more of a retail component and a strip mall component of it. But the key is with the Waverly property, it's zoned as being in manufacturing.
But you're
Just like
saying
this one.
there's a retail component to the
Well,
Waverly?
if I do remember correctly, I believe there's a yoga studio there. I believe there was a steakhouse there at one point. And so when you have those aspects of it, it's just like sorry for saying this, Mr. Carter, the Terracon properties. Terracon properties here, similar to Flex Warehouse on 1301 Keniston's a perfect example of this. There's a warehouse component of it, there's an office component of it. So what happens here, it's a mixed use.
But you're saying retail is the mixed use? You're saying
Office,
office
retail, and warehousing.
So you're looking at a mixed use of office, retail, or industrial all in the, for your
Well,
cap
these are
rates?
all, no, but for 1100 Waverly, it's been established that it's industrial property. Colliers uses it as industrial property. We have it zoned as being industrial property, even though it's on Waverly.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry if I,
I know it's zoned as industrial use, but the same thing, you've got office industrial, you've got retail industrial.
Yep.
But it's still zoned as industrial, that's what I'm trying to determine, is the mixed use that is there.
yeah, well, but when it came with the sale price, when the analysis, when the purchaser
But
bought that,
industrial, retail, and office go for different rates, do they not?
of course they do, but what
That's
happens?
my question, thank you, that's
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, number one, first of all, a general comment. When mailers have been provided, I prefer to see the full mailer
Okay.
returned. Secondly, vacancy is, I was just, taking a peek ahead and seeing that there's an issue with vacancy. Has there been any historic vacancy in this?
Well, it's interesting when I look at that, because for this property here, the vacancy rents were lower, I think in 2013 and 2012. They weren't as high as they are today. So that was a part of it. Then we always look at longer averages when we do our vacancy analysis. Whenever there's sort of dips in vacancy, we look at more of a historical average. So I thought about this. So when we were talking about this earlier on with regards to doing a vacancy, I I pondered looking at that issue, but in this day and age of our appeal cycle right now, you know, I'll put it in the board's hands with regards to vacancy for this property.
Now, this question probably applies to all these properties in the Inkster Industrial Park.
Yep.
As of the reference date, April 1st, 2018, Center Park really hasn't been developed yet,
Yep.
but it's on the horizon.
Yep.
Do you think that would affect cap rates?
It will bring more competition to the marketplace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
definitely.
All right, thank you for that. So,
I'm going to start off with my rebuttal. Evidence, small amount to present.
on the, okay.
Yes.
There should be one there for each one. And so you'll recall that I very particularly asked the assessor
Yeah,
about the
sorry. I'll get it. Sorry.
That's, yeah. I don't anticipate we'll be here till 6 this evening, but it's not gonna be done.
We're not
within
going
20
past-
minutes. Yeah.
Past 2:30.
I got a barbecue.
I don't anticipate we'll be here then. So you'll recall that I very particularly asked the assessor about his information on page 11 and asked him about the second paragraph at the top of his page 11, where it says that the net operating income for these cap rate comparables has been developed through stabilizing the owner's reported income and expense information. Capitalization rates have been derived by dividing the property's net operating income by its sale. First thing I'm going to draw your attention to is 90 Park Lane, and you'll see on our page one, double-sided them. You'll see there that there was a news release from Pirate, which is the Pure Industrial Real Estate Trust, in December of 2017. Particularly, this is shown on page 5. The trust, and I've highlighted the sections there for you on our page 1 and on our page 5. The trust was able to relocate the existing tenant from this asset, and here they're talking about 90 Park Lane, to another trust-owned asset. The tenant essentially expanded its space and signed a new long-term lease in the new space. But when you go down to the last sentence there on highlighted on page 1, the asset was unencumbered at time of sale. It was vacant. They moved the tenant out, it was offered for sale, it was vacant, there was no income generated by that property. The assessment department has and continues, notwithstanding the rebuttal information previously presented, continues to put this forward as a legitimate cap rate comparable from which they've extracted a capitalization rate based on the income generated. It hasn't generated any. I can also tell you that subsequent to the sale, this property, 90 Park Lane, was an owner-occupier situation, so continued to generate no income. Secondly, and I know that the panel member spent some time on this, 1100 Waverly Street. I don't know if Mr. Froelich has had the opportunity. I have looked at the sales verification questionnaire that was sent out to them. On the sales verification questionnaire, they very clearly have added that this is an office and industrial property. This is a mixed property, and I think the assessor, in a sort of cursory way, alluded to this. It's unusual. And on our page 1, I've also had a look at the rent roll. I can tell you that there is a significant amount of non-industrial space. Flex warehouse, typically what you'll find is the individual bays with office area at the front, warehouse area at the back. This particular property, 1100 Waverly, has had a bunch of the space developed differently than a mixed office/industrial bay in the views that you would find. And I've looked at the rent roll at the time of sale. Restaurant, there's an engineering group, which is office space, an education resource center, same thing. There's a laser tag facility in there. There's a gymnasium in there. Those are not industrial uses. Liquor Control Commission has a small amount of space in there. I believe it to be office. Pelford Community Living Services has office space in there, so when you look at the sales verification form and the rent roll in place at the time of sale, you have to be led to the conclusion that this is not really a typical flex warehouse type of situation. So for those reasons, we've concluded and would argue that 90 Park Lane and 1100 Waverly, for the reasons that we've already canvassed here, are not legitimate capitalization rate comparables, which leaves the assessor with two cap rate extractions based on actual incomes, one at 7.44% and one at 8%, which fits in line with our capitalization rate study. So before I move on to my brief, I'm happy to...
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, I'm happy to have questions asked.
Are you familiar with this document here, Mr. Borgstrom?
What is it?
It's the Altus Group Capitalization Study for Industrial Properties in 2018-2019.
Yes.
Okay. So are you familiar with the content that was in this?
Yes.
Okay. So on this page here.
Okay, so I'm happy, so.
Okay,
I'm happy,
just.
so stop for a minute. I'm happy to have you introduce it as rebuttal evidence, and I'm happy to have you then question me about it, but you'll appreciate that I'm at a disadvantage not having the document in front of me and not having the document included within my.
Well, I'm just going to read one line off of here.
Sure.
And so so in the document that was provided by Altus in the last cycle, it says acquisitions or investments by large property owners, acquisitions or investments by corporations, pension funds, real estate investment analysis that involve multiple parcels typically should not be considered for analysis.
Let me stop you there and tell you that right now I was questioning you on your evidence, and I have introduced rebuttal on your evidence. I have not gone over my evidence yet, so perhaps save that question for
Okay. Okay. And my only other question that I had, did I not clearly state that 1100 Waverly, because your words were, I believe they were disingenuous with regards to me stating that that this property on 1100 Waverly was very diverse in nature. And when I look at like 12,000 square feet, I look at a gym. To me, those are very similar to warehouse spaces. When you have a gym, it's an open floor system. It can very easily be converted to a warehouse space.
Gymnasium, the Good Life facility in 201 Portage, is that industrial space?
No, but what I'm saying though is that this property here could easily be converted into a flex warehouse space, and to imply that, you know, this property is 138,000 square feet. It's a large property. There's a lot of different uses here.
So I can tell you, and as I testified to, and I'm here under oath, that I looked at the sales verification form sent out by the city and responded to. And I looked at the rent roll at the time of sale, and I can tell you that the sales verification form, even though it wasn't a question, the person or the individual responding to that actually wrote on their office and warehouse. And I can tell you in looking at the rent roll, these are only some examples of the tenancies. I can tell you that the rent roll to me indicated that this is in fact not a classic flex warehouse that you might find ordinarily in the market, such as the subject, that much of the space has been developed with other uses, for example, 100% office, and in flex warehouses we talked about the typical setup where you have a small office area at the front and warehouse at the back. That's typically what you're going to find in a flex warehouse. That's not the circumstance in many of the spaces in 1100.
But we're also using...
Let me finish. That's exactly the point, or that's the only point that I was making about 1100 Waverly.
But we're also not using a 5% cap rate for this property. We're using a 7% cap rate, which is a significant difference.
Okay, let's stick to
Thank you.
questions.
Yeah, no problem. That's all I have for rebuttal questions.
Okay, you can proceed with your presentation.
I'm not sure if the board had any questions about the rebuttal.
No.
Sorry.
I have none.
Okay, thank you. And as we move forward, we've gone over, and we'll go over our capitalization rate study. So can I assume that the questions asked and answered about the capitalization rate study on both sides, and on a couple of expense study, which I will touch on ours. And the questions asked, generally speaking, about the model and the process can apply to all of the properties to
Yep.
move the matter forward. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
That is what we normally do.
Yep. I always look for confirmation. So I'm going to start at page 3. The assessor's brief does in fact show that the property was built between 1974 and 2004. But the 2004 edition was very small with a plan area of 1,200 square feet. So almost the entire property, certainly more than 320,000 square feet of it was built in 1974 and 1975. And you'll see on page 3, we show a table there, excuse me, with the various ages of the individual, we'll call them structures on the site. There are 4 separate, discrete buildings. Each of them, or certainly 3 of them, are very particularly office warehouse, and then we have the other one. And I've included some pictures on the next, on page 2, and that's the one building that has some upper floor space, which you'll also see there in that picture, a loading bay on the left hand, or sorry, the right hand side, and a loading bay sort of towards the middle of the property. So this is also what I would consider to be primarily flex warehouse space. On the left hand side of the picture, you'll see the rear of one of the other buildings, and there you'll see the typical rear end grade level loading for flex warehouses. Certainly in this particular property, it is, I believe, grade loading. I have inspected the property, but it's going back a number of years, and I'll be stretching my memory to recall each or the number of units that were in it and the details of those units. We do include a site plan, sorts at the bottom of page 3, just to give you a visual of the outlay. Our approach as we move through today, where there are rents in place, we'll use the actual rents in place. Where there are vacant spaces or owner-occupied spaces, we will turn to the market to determine or to make an estimate as to what we believe would be an appropriate rent to be applied to that space. In this particular facility, I know that one of the members has already looked ahead. This property has experienced some vacancy over the years, up to and including the reference date, and so we show those rental details on page 8. Site-specific rental comparables, or site-specific rental rates, rather, are preferred, in my opinion. And you'll see there that a large number of these spaces had stepped rents, and you'll see there a number of them have stepped rents, including a number of them in 2017, very close to the reference date. And so you'll also see there for the vacant spaces, for each and every one of the vacant spaces, we have applied a rate of $5.25 a square foot. And that was based on the leasing activity that we saw in the property. The 2 that I'm going to draw your particular attention to is 109A and 109B. You'll see there that those are very high rents. I believe that those are actually office finish, which accounts for the rental rates on those particular spaces. The other one that I want to draw your attention to is 111A. That is and has been considered an unleasable space. It's very small in the big picture, but it's 510 square feet. We consider it to be unleasable, has been for many cycles, and so we've applied no rent to that. Overall, we think that the rental rates that we've applied based on the table on page 8, total rent equating to $547 a square foot, that's lower than the assessment of the city's model at $584, and we think that that should be preferred and used. We did take a look at vacancy within this property. We show that on page 9. And you'll see there, and I look back historically from December of 17. These are the rent rolls at the year end, December of 16, December 15, and 14. Looks to me like December of 15 is the oddball in the lot, and this property has experienced a higher than normal vacancy. Now, because we're acting on a 2-year cycle, when you have a vacancy rate that high, covering that 2-year period, we're going to consider that and give it much greater weight. Where a vacancy might have been escalated and then is reduced closer to the reference date, we may give that a lot less weight, and perhaps even not even adjust it at all. In our view, based on the actual in place at the time of sale, remembering that the 2 years leading up to the reference date were 18% and 21%, we've applied and stabilized the vacancy rate at 15%. If that improves and changes going forward, we'll certainly adjust that in future cycles. I'm going to leave my commentary on vacancy for the area for our cap rate study. I took a very close look at the Croach report, or sorry, that's going back years, the Johnson report, but I also took a look at what was happening. And one of the panel members I know asked about Centerport, but it's not just Centerport, it's all the development in the Brookside area, in the arm of Rosser, and we took a significant extended look at that, as well as the arm of Headingley, the arm of McDonald's, West St. Paul, Springfield. All of those areas have had a significant amount of development, certainly in place as of the reference date, and we'll go over that in the cap rate study as additional support for the vacancy rate. Shortfall rate, we are agreeing with the city at $3.75 a square foot. The non-recoverable expenses, and I'll take, we continue to apply allowance of 7%, and I'll take an opportunity to go over this very briefly, because I understand that all the members have heard this before. I want to clarify the assessor's description in their approach is in that they excluded management fees. So have we. As you look through this, and I know you've already seen it before, the 7% allowance is not inclusive of a management fee. It is an allowance that is a stabilized expense involving a number of typical non-recoverable expenses relating to the proper and competent operation of any property. These expenses are virtually never recovered from any tenants, in any circumstances, including tenants or net leases. And those would include things like leasing commissions, there are structural repairs, there are many instances where some repair and maintenance items are excluded within lease agreements. Based on our study, and you'll appreciate that this study is fairly extensive, we continue to believe that 7% is the right number. Now, I know that the city has utilized this in a number of cycles dating back to, I believe, 1998 and preceding. And I'm also aware that the municipal board has made findings with respect to the non-inclusion of leasing commissions, etc., to deduct that from rents. But the guidelines of the department and the practice of the department has consistently, year over year, to allow a total non-recoverable expense allowance of 7%. They break it down as 5 and 2, but through all of the years leading up to this reassessment, they have used 7% in each and every assessment that I've been involved with, dating back to at least 1998, I think. So we think that 7% is the right amount. That's how we have calculated our capitalization rate extractions. And if that is to be disallowed, then our capitalization rates would all go up by about 40 basis points. So if that 7% is to be disallowed by this panel, then our capitalization rate comparables would all go up by about 40 basis points, higher than what we're suggesting here. Which then leads us to the capitalization rates. This property, let me just take you to the rear. So if we take take a look at page 18 of our brief. This is the city's commercial summary. In the pages 16 and 17 before that, we actually show the actual physical structures as constructed on the site. But on page 18, you'll see there that the overall effective year built for this property, the city has defined as 1975. And so as of the reference date, this is a building that's approaching 45 years old. Industrial properties, if you look on an age life table in cost approach, is typically in the range of 50 years. And so, yes, the life gets extended when you are improving the property with these non-recoverable expenses, such as redoing heating systems, upgrading electrical systems. In some cases, you can extend the life. But this is no doubt an older building, and I'll get into the cap rate study in a moment. It's in an area that has, or is now, subject to a significant amount of competition for much newer stock outside of the city of Winnipeg in areas which do not carry the burden of business taxes on them as well. So, we are disputing the city's 6.5% cap rate that they have applied in this particular case. And we think based on the age of the property and the area, that 7.25 is the right number. I'm going to take a look at our capitalization rate study, and I'm going to ask if we have all seen this before.
What page are you referencing to?
The separately filed Altus Industrial Capitalization Rate Study, 2020.
This one here, or am I missing it?
So it is titled on the first page, Altus Group Limited, Capitalization Rate Study for Industrial Properties, 2020-2021 Real Estate Assessment.
Back.
I'll just go over a few points here.
Yeah, but have you taken out some of the cap rates that you've used on those ones?
Well, let's go over this, and
Yeah.
why don't you let me go through our information.
Sorry.
Have you got it?
Yeah.
No.
Just got so much paper these days. The page are you referencing?
I haven't yet.
Yeah, okay.
We're good?
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Have we all seen this study before?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
I haven't.
So but you've had a chance to read it, so I'm just going to touch on the highlights. So, in preparing this report, we took a look at a number of items. We took a look at what was going on in the financial markets. We took a look at broker reports for their particular opinions, and I'll touch on those briefly. And we took a look at some very specific cap rate comparables in the marketplace. We also took a look at development around the city of Winnipeg. And we took a look at vacancy rates as reported by the Johnson report, also within the city of Winnipeg. So just touching very briefly at page 5, where we show a table of the industrial parks within the city of Winnipeg and the Headingley Business Park. In addition to that, there were also lands within Centerport, including Yarmouth Rosser. They were being developed and sold as early as 2012. I can also tell you that while sewer and water were projected to be within those properties by April 1st of 2016, they were late coming on stream. They were absolutely in place with the Westman Water Co-op by the reference date April 1st of 18. And so on page 6, you can see there the development that has gone on, and all of that in a picture on page 6 in the top right-hand side. On the left-hand side of Route 90, that's all within the RM of Rosser, which does not carry with it business tax component. From an occupancy expense perspective. And we also took a look on page 7, acres serviced, what was going on, generally speaking. So Brookport and Brookside Industrial both have a large number of acres coming on stream, or were on stream. The Army Headingley and the Headingley Business Park, 225 acres, all serviced. And in the RM McDonald South Landing Business Park of 100 acres. This does not include the RM of West St. Paul or the RM of Springfield. And as you're driving up Route 90 along the road, the north perimeter, you can see the development in West St. Paul, and you can see all of the development that has been ongoing in the RM of Rosser. This, in my mind, forms a significant risk to any development within Winnipeg, but in particular to development to investments, investment properties in the northwest quadrant of Winnipeg in closer proximity to the Arm of Rosser. The interesting thing that I thought was really interesting and actually quite eye-opening is that fully in the 4 or 5 years leading up to the reference date of April 1st of 2018, only 1/3 of industrial land development happened within the city of Winnipeg. Everything else was outside. Rosser, Headingley, McDonald, West St. Paul. So there is a significant pressure, certainly on the northwest quadrant of the city. As I indicated, we also took a look at what was going on in vacancy with respect to what was reported in the year-end 2017 Johnson report. This is an independent publication published twice a year. December of 2017 is as close as we can get to the reference year, reference date without going past it. On page 8, we show the overall vacancy. This includes owner-occupied and government-occupied buildings. That necessarily distorts downward the vacancy rate. We took a look at what was actually happening on page 9 in investment properties. We show you the composition for single-tenant investment properties and for multi-tenant investment properties. The vacancy rates were significantly higher, as reported by Mr. Johnson. In the end, allowing a vacancy and collection loss allowance, we typically apply 4%. There are times, depending on location, where we will, bump that up to 5 or 6%. For example, in the West End, I believe that the rate applied is 6%. And so that's the way capitalization rates for the more recent sales have been extracted. You are on a 4% vacancy rate. We also took a look at what was going on with the brokerage reports. That's on page 11. And you'll see there, these are exactly the same reports that the department has referred to, Colliers, CBRE, and Cushman. The difference is that as we look at the definitions reported by these various parties, take a look at page 33. These are the benchmarks reported by Colliers for single-tenant and multi-tenant industrial. Colliers reports are for the best of the best, whether you're talking about a single-tenant or a multi-tenant situation. When you look at the descriptions under industrial with the tilt-up, newer, long-term, longer-term investment grade covenants on the leases, these are properties that are the best of the best. And as you drive out Route 90 and look in Rosser, these are exactly the types of buildings that are going up out there, the tilt-up, high ceiling, 5,000 to 10,000 square foot bays for the multi-tenants. So these set the rates for the best of the best. Certainly not something that's approaching 45 years old. There are also, on page 37, we show similarly for the office and industrial from CBRE. And you see there, best of class under Class A industrial. Best of class product recently completed to a high standard. Leases to better quality tenants on 5 to 10 year leases, typically newer construction. Class B, when you look at industrial, it's an older product. I would certainly suggest that it doesn't incorporate anything as old as approaching 45 years old. Mostly 5-year leases and typically previously owned. So when you refer to these broker reports, it's also important to bear in mind what their benchmark definitions are in considering what any particular subject property's capitalization rate should be. So we also took a look at capitalization rate extractions. We show those on our page 13, and the assessor jumped the gun, but he's quite right. Based on what previously presented, we have in fact amended our submission. I do note that notwithstanding previous rebuttal on Bartlett, they continue to introduce it, and Waverly. But number 5, Richard Avenue, based on the rebuttal provided by the city and based on our follow-up research, I agree that this is not an arm's length transaction. There are related parties in the corporation, and so that should be excluded. And we have also amended the Slate portfolio sale to include a land lease expense because some of the properties are on airport lands and they have a non-recoverable operating expense in terms of a land lease. And so we have adjusted that accordingly down to 7.87%. So number 6, the Slate portfolio should be 7.87% and not 8.3%. And that's for a number of properties, not a single property. I can tell you that this portfolio, and we show the details of it on page 26, and there's a typo in there that's been subsequently corrected. But the Slate portfolio, we confirmed all of the sales. We confirmed those sales with the VP of Narland, who was the purchaser of these properties. I can confirm that the sales, many of the sales currently appear on their website. And so we have in fact confirmed that this is a valid sale. So, but with an adjusted cap rate of 7.87%. So we go through the mathematics, turning back to our agreed in principle on page 10. See that the rents, the 15% vacancy allowance based on the historical 7%. That's a typo. It should read non-recoverable. 7.25% cap rate. We're looking for reduction to $17,011,000 rounded. I do also have included some pictures of the exterior from the previous inspection. It's going back a number of years to 2009. The buildings have not changed materially over that time. So 13, 14, 15. You'll see pictures of the exterior to give you a flavor. Certainly on page 13, that will show you, talking about when we talk about typical flex warehouse development, where the top is the exterior at the front, the bottom is an exterior at the rear, where we build industrial loading docks, loading bays, and the individual bay spaces. Similarly, on page 14, you'll see exactly the same thing, where you've got some loading bays actually in the front, but you also have them at the rear. So while it looks like a 2-story, it's really not when you consider the front and the back of the building's concert. So, save and accept any questions. That's our submission on this property. The other properties should be answered.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Fallon?
Yeah, sure thing. Are they original windows on the building here as we're looking at the pictures?
I don't know.
Okay, so they don't look like aluminum sliders.
But okay, but you may, they might have all been sealed units when they were originally installed. I don't know.
Okay.
But I can also tell you that that would be one of the things that would be done to extend the life of a building that I talked about. So while the building is approaching 45 years, which would typically approaching the end of life, I don't think this building is imminent at the end of life, but it is definitely an older construction, older layout.
Yeah, and so,
I have no doubt that there have been improvements. The roof, for example, will have been done at least once over this time.
are you familiar with any permits taken out on this property
I am not.
recently? Yeah, and there are $2 million worth of permits taken out recently.
If you're wanting to introduce evidence as rebuttal, I'm happy to look
I'm
at
not-
it.
I'm
But
not-
I'm not this is our information, and I haven't taken a look at
Well,
permit values.
but you're sort of talking from both ends though, right? Because in some regards, you're saying it's at the end of its economic life, but you're also acknowledging the fact that there have been some improvements made to the
That's-
property.
I did not indicate in my testimony that it was near the end of its economic life. So
You
typically,
said most buildings that are 45 years old for industrial are at the end of economic life.
that's not what I said, Mr. Fuller. You'll recall that what I talked about was when you look at a cost approach and the age life tables for industrial buildings of this type, this construction, typically they're done on a 50-year age life table. But I also indicated that there will be things that can be done to these buildings to extend their life. And what I did add to that is that this building was approaching 45 years old as of the reference date. So if there's $2 million.
What's a small percentage, but
Yeah, hang on, let me just answer that. That works out to about $6.09 a square foot. This is not a significant amount of money when you're looking at a series of buildings that total approaching 330,000 square feet. This is not a significant amount of money.
okay. Are leases that were signed in 2008 reflective of market conditions in 2018?
They might.
Okay, so would $4.55,
Which one are you referring to?
there are two leases that are listed here. What first one's Iron Mountain,
Okay, so if you give me a unit number, that helps.
6567.
Okay. You'll see there, but the rent that we show there at $4.55 is a step up effective January of 17.
Okay.
So that's not the rent that was applied in 2008, it's a stepped up rent.
Yeah. Okay, but, yeah, but, and the same thing that I've noticed also in, for pet value at 127. So even though it's a step-up lease, it's not reflective of market leases that are closer to
Well, we can
the reference
we
date.
can quibble about opinions, but
Yeah.
my view is that when there are step-ups in place, those are the rents that an owner or any potential purchaser are contractually obligated to accept.
I understand that.
Market rent is a rent that is freely negotiated between the landlord and a tenant, very similar to development.
Yeah.
Freely negotiated between landlord and tenant, each acting knowledgeably and in their own best interest, both acting without duress or undue stimulus, and all of these leases, I say,
We're getting kind
reflect
of,
those conditions.
let's pick it
Okay,
up.
no problem. You used gross potential rent of $5.47. How come you?
Overall.
Overall. So how come you didn't use that as a net effective rent when you came up with your gross potential income?
That's what it works out to, and there are some rents that distort it. For example, as I went over, 109A, 109B, which are relatively small spaces. But there are also spaces as well that tend to distort is the wrong word. They affect the overall level of rent. Based on the rents in place, our view was that 525 was appropriate to apply to vacant space, and that's what we apply. Mathematically, 547 is what it works out to per square foot.
Are you familiar with municipal board orders with regards to leasing commissions and tenant inducements?
This is not, none of these rents include leasing commissions or tenant inducements.
But what you had stated though beforehand, when you're looking at your expense ratios, that we need to factor that into the calculations of why there should be a 5% management fee.
I don't believe I referred to expense ratios. If you're talking about the non-recoverable expense allowance, our 7% does not include management fees. And if you've read through our non-recoverable expenses study, it very clearly says that in there.
With regard to the slate portfolio, how many sales did you use on that?
All of the ones that we show within our capitalization rate study,
Okay, well, it's a one page under cap rate study, so I just want to make sure.
but it addresses, it shows all of the addresses in there.
So was that based on, I got to find it here, thank you. So it just says slate portfolio, $47 million of sales, but there's been conflicting information done on that, so I just want to make sure.
Well, what are you exactly referring to with conflicting information?
Well, I've seen different agencies, different numbers.
Okay, so we have, as arising from rebuttal of the assessor, as we did
Yeah.
with Richard Avenue, I indicated that we revised the capitalization rate down to 7.87%. I also indicated, as I was going through our cap rate study, that there was a typo, a calculation error, if you will, formula in the cell. The total leasable area should read 676,959. That was just a formula error. The other figures are all correct in terms of the NOIs and the assessments. I also indicated that we have amended the cap rate based on the non-recoverable land use expense associated with this property. Was that, with some of those properties being on airport lands?
Okay, in your cap rate study, number 2 and number 3, they, built in 1969 and even in 1977, 2, 3, and 4, all those cap rates range from 6.36% to 6.94%. They're a lot closer to our 7 than they are to your 7.25, and they're a similar age and similar size as well. The building here is slightly smaller, like the ones here, like even the largest one here is at 256. But that, our cap rate's very close to that, so I'm not too sure. They're all in similar areas. They'd all be impacted by that, so how could you ask for a 7.25 and your cap rates are showing all under 7 here?
So as I indicated at the onset, we took a look at a number of different components that would comprise the cap rate or would affect the cap rate. One would be the financial markets. Another thing, item that we looked at were the market reports, and I went over those in some detail, including the benchmark definitions. In addition to these capitalization rates, if we look at the 2 cap rates within the assessor's evidence on their page 11, 7.44 and 8%, 7.25 for a building that's approaching 45 years old is, in our view, entirely appropriate.
No other questions?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, questions?
Yes, Mr. Bergstrom, how would you classify the subject property? Is that a A or is it a B?
Well, A's typically are single tenants or mature. It is a large property. I would think that it might have, because of its, when you get a large property like this and it's multi-tenanted, there's some stability that can be achieved in there in terms of vacancy rates, notwithstanding this property's history. I think what you see in the subject property history is in part a result of its age and I won't say obsolete design, but a design from the 70s, and the competition that's popping up outside the city of Winnipeg. I think those are impacting the vacancy rates within the subject property. And so, in terms of the classification, I think that it would have, given its size, it would have some appeal to any investor, including institutional investors, notwithstanding that the property is quite a bit older in nature. So, in terms of our study, on page 13 of the cap rate study, I probably put it into a B.
So therefore, I see that the Bs would normally run in the percentage-wise from 7 to 7 3/4. So you feel as if the 7 1/4 is okay?
I do, and that's why I applied it. It could be as low as 7, it could be higher.
You've done a vacancy study and you've applied the 15% vacancy rate?
Yeah, I took a look at the 4 years, just to make sure that we
Yeah.
are clear. I took a look at the 4 years, 15 to me looks like an oddball. I didn't look past the reference date, so I don't know what's happened. But certainly in 16 and 17, it had significantly elevated rates that should be recognized. If it improved as of, well, today, or coming up to 2020, it'll be captured in the next reassessment.
There's a discrepancy in regards to your square footage and compared to the cities. It's like 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, we went off of what the rental reports, and so we're using the higher area and all of those rents that we show on our page 8. The rent rolls we've actually attached at the rear of our submission, pages 20 and 21. All of the occupants here are shown on those rent roll documents. And so mathematically, it adds up to what we're showing.
So do you feel as if your figure is correct?
Based on the rent rolls that were submitted to the city, yes.
Okay, I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Susan, any questions?
Do you have any vacancies that come a little closer to your 15% data?
When you have an elevated vacancy rate like that, it is unusual, and certainly unusual to be extended over 2 years. This is professionally managed by one of the large property management companies in the city, very competent ownership. So it's not like you're going to blame bad management in this case. Generally speaking, it's unusual to find something that high, and I think as we go through the other ones, I don't recall another one on today's docket that has a vacancy rate like that within the rental properties.
So none of the studies indicate 15%. What did the studies indicate? If you were just purely sort of building the sage in the market, what would you look at?
Ordinarily, we look at what the, we would look at two things. What is the actual vacancy within the property? For rental properties, obviously for owner-occupied situations, they're either 0% vacancy or 100% vacancy. But for rental properties, we take a look at what's going on with the property as of the reference date, and if there's something sort of unusual in a couple of previous years, we'll expand our look backwards at it, and we may adjust that. We also consider what's going on, or what's reported by Mr. Johnson in his reports, but ultimately for rental properties, we would typically go with sort of what's going on in the property where it's escalated. Where it's 0 or near 0, I would never capitalize in perpetuity something that's 0 or near 0. But with the Johnson reports, you also see that for the investment properties, the vacancy only rates 8 or 9% in the years leading up to the reference date. I'm not using that either, so I think it's a signal that the investment inventory in Winnipeg, and it's been said by certainly at the real estate forums that I've attended, Winnipeg is under demolished. They have they have an overstock, an aging stock for industrial properties, and so that.
Okay, on saying that, are you finding 15% in the other buildings of the same age?
Not
Or you don't have that kind of
generally.
information in your or your vacancy study?
We don't. Our vacancy study is comprised of a review of Mr. Johnson's information. I can tell you that 15% is not what you would typically find in a rental property.
Okay.
But you're quoted as saying that the Johnson report shows 8 or 9%.
So take a look at the, hang on, take a look at the capitalization rate study. And you take a look at page 9, right? And there you'll see that the single tenant investment vacancy rates range from 3.1 to 8.7. Multi-tenants range from 5.8 to 8.4. you look at the single tenant investment rates, 2016 was 9.2, 2017 8.7, right? So it depends on how you look at it.
Well, because, you know, the reason why I asked that is because I got the same Johnson report that I'm looking at the June industrial, and the Inkster area is a bit high.
Well, I'm not.
And
Well,
so-
let's, okay.
To be
The
clear,
panel was asking questions.
Okay.
yeah, to be clear, and just so we understand what we're looking at here, I look at the December 2017 report in preparing this, not the capitalization rate study for industrial properties.
I have no more questions.
Okay, my question again on the vacancy, you gave us the December 31st.
Yeah.
Do you have the annual overall average
I
vacancies?
do not. Typically, we're working off the same information that's provided to the city, the income expense questionnaires, which this particular one also provides the rules. So what I have is a snapshot annually. You wouldn't expect, where there are 5-year leases, you wouldn't expect a vacancy rate to go down to 1% and then up to 15% at the end, or 20% at the end of the year. So you would expect to find a vacancy rate relatively consistent throughout the year, notwithstanding this snapshot that we're looking at.
Well, just for example, in December 15th, December of 15, it was
Yeah.
1.19. Somehow in the 12-month period, it went up. Did it go up in December? Did it go up in
Well,
January?
But when you look at this, at that same information, you'll also see that it went down in a 12-month period.
Yes?
And so they obviously had some lease ups in there and some older tenancies that matured and the tenants moved out. So whether you look at the 2 years preceding or the 4 years preceding, it's pretty clear to me that this property has an issue with vacancy and retaining tenancies.
Okay. All right, I have no more questions, so is there summation you wish to do?
Just a quick summation.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things that I came across is the Cushman Wakefield report that gives the industrial overview of the Winnipeg marketplace. Overall vacant industrial rate is at 3% for 2017, and they remain for it to be flat in 2018. Overall rents are increasing.
Is
This is a summation.
Is this new evidence?
This is a summation. So overall
Is this
speaking,
new evidence?
no, it's not. It's my summation.
Well, you can't present
Okay.
new stuff in summation. You can talk about what you presented.
General market conditions show that the industrial warehousing spaces is in a good situation. We haven't seen market values decline. All key economic indicators within the city of Winnipeg show that there was a growing, boosting economy. When Mr. Boardroom speaks about post-reference material with regards to what's happening in the future, we're looking at right here, right now. When we're doing the market valuation, we're looking as of April 1st, 2018. So when we look at all these factors that take place, in 2016, this property wasn't appealed. In 2018, the value was $20,243,000. Mr. Boardroom's asking for $17 million. Nothing would indicate to me that industrial properties have gone down, especially when we talk to market leaders about the industrial warehousing space within the city of Winnipeg, and economic conditions are not declining. They're in a positive environment. John's report shows that. Other economic indicators show that. Why do you think cap rates are so low with regards to industrial properties? Because the economy is doing well with regards to that. Thank you.
Summation?
I think that there is sufficient evidence before you to support all the conclusions that we've reached on this report and the other properties in the docket today, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, we will take a 10-minute break. Get underway. We'll move to 1800 Heath Street.
Just do the top one, Michelle, if at all possible.
And the matter is assessed value, so you can proceed, Mr. Coe.
Yep, for sure. File number is 192898. Roll number is 140644 10500. Address is 1800 Inkster Boulevard. Assessed value that we have is $22,678,000. Inventory warehouse. We have 3 different premises here. Actual year of builds range from 1978 to 2013. Zoned M2. We have a leasable area of 387,500, and we got a land, the planned area of 1.87. What's interesting about this property is that it had recently gone through the original building. They had gone through significant renovations recently where they've added their square footages, as you'll see in the pictures. Page 2 just shows its Sobeys, located on Inkster Boulevard. Here's a picture from Inkster, a view from Plymouth. Top of page 3 shows what it looked like in 2018. 2 overhead pictures. And on page 4, it shows the 2013 picture where they made the building addition. And they increased the square footage from 122,000 square footage addition. These pictures here that we have on file here, I'm pretty sure they're Altises. Yep, well, part of them are though. So what happens here is on page 5 and page 6, these are the new areas that were built, that were added on the 122,000 square feet. As you can see, very nice, very modern, great lights, great storage system, very clean. And page 7 shows some of the office space located for the property. Page 9 shows the permit value taken out. So when they did the addition of the 123,000 square feet, the increase was 1.6 million, if I read that right. 0. Yeah, 16 million, I guess. $16 million increase on page 9. Page 10 and 11 show some of the other permits taking place for the property. Another 582,000 taken in 2015. With regard to the banana rooms, which was interesting. Sobeys allow for installation of 2 banana rooms. I guess to store their bananas. Never seen that before, so I'll be learning stuff about industrial. What we have here is the property owner has been compliant and filling out income and expense mailer information. Page 13 shows print screens. If I just ask Mr. Harden a question, please.
Okay.
Is this not sufficient enough? Because you sometimes want the whole thing, and it's a trade-off between paper and whatnot, because it's owner-occupied, it's pretty simple. This is what they give us. Like, there's a balance, because I understand
Well,
what
for
you're looking.
owner-occupied, it's just the expenses really that
Yeah,
we're interested in.
Yeah.
But for rental, income and expenses, we just like to look, at least I like to look at it.
okay. So I'll try to get more information. Page 14 shows the overview of the areas that we have, the blended rate that we have on the 387,500 square feet is $4.16. We have the potential rent is 1.6 million, 3.5% vacancy, 2% expensive shortfall. We come up with a net operating income of $1,474,000. Using the 6.5% cap rate, we come up with a value of $22,678. What I have here is I got some comparable leases that are most of them are nearby. The one on Saskatchewan is not the very last one. That is not a true lease. I didn't cross it on mine. Sorry. So I crossed it out on yours,
Yeah.
but I forgot to cross it out on mine. So I just wanted to make sure you guys knew about that.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So this is not within your evidence?
Well, the last 1,400, I'm excluding it. I was told by one of my colleagues that it's not a fee simple lease, that there's other parties involved. But if we look at the rents, the other rents that we have in the neighborhood, we have rents for larger square foot areas between $4.22 to $8.15. Comfortable with all these rents that I have here. The Kernahan one is a true net lease. I did additional research with regards to this, and I contacted the property manager for this, and she did confirm that with me. The interesting thing about 630 Kernahan is that that used to be a Palliser furniture warehouse. And what happened is that over 450,000 square feet, and they've subdivided it into 11 different renters. And their space varies within it. But what's interesting, they still only have one electrical unit there to to collect all electrical information, which is why some of the leases are semi-gross. But what I did is, because with that information, I found out that there are actually 4 good leases in that building, and I have all that documentation available, but I am very comfortable with the $8.15 that's presented here. So I got a good range. We've talked about a cap rate study. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, questions, Mr. Boardroom?
I do, just bear with me for one moment. So if we take a look at your rent comparables on page, let me back up and start at the beginning. This is a very large, single occupant industrial warehouse, correct?
Yep.
And its configuration is unsuitable for subdivision, correct?
I can't make that comment because
Fair enough.
a similar building at Kernahan, which was the same sort of size, which was over 400,000 square feet, they've been able to subdivide it.
You know how much they spent on that?
I'm not aware of that, but
Okay.
obviously it is possible.
So, your mental comparables, in dealing with, and they're not numbered, but if we deal with the first one at 1345 Redwood, isn't that building 100% air conditioned, climate controlled?
Yep.
And the subject property has some cooler space. The warehouse itself is not air conditioned, right? In the subject property?
I've never been in the subject property,
Okay, fair
so I
enough.
can't comment on that. But obviously there are some areas that are temperature controlled because they store bananas.
Okay, so the lease at 630 Kernahan.
Yep.
The original lease was signed by Trican Tire Distributors, right?
Yes.
Now, you're showing a rent there of $8.15 square foot. You'll appreciate that this falls under the Palliser portfolio, which is an Altus client, right?
Which is a what?
An Altus client.
Yep.
So, what is the source of the $8.15 a square foot?
Well, what happens, I looked at the income and expense mailer,
Okay.
and then I followed up with Leanne McDonald, who's the assistant controller at College Furniture.
Okay.
And she
So,
gave me,
and I'll follow up with that as well,
Yep.
because I'm looking at the information here provided by Palliser,
Okay.
rentals for all of their properties. It indicates to me that the lease rates, the original lease rate was $375 in July of 13, escalating all the way up to, well, it's post-reference. As of the reference date, $4.15 a square foot, by $8.15.
okay,
And so there's a discrepancy there that I don't have an answer for, but we will certainly investigate it.
well, Mr. Boardroom, as you know, I look at the mailers, I get information, so maybe there's an issue of inconsistent information.
And so I appreciate that you said that you checked and that you said you followed up.
I followed up on it, yep.
And perfect, so I'm not disputing your information, I'm just saying that we have conflicting.
And you know what, and I'll.
Because we're using the same rental
Yeah,
comparable in our.
yeah, exactly, and I understand that, yeah. So 2017 mailer shows 11 properties on the lease,
Yeah,
right? Total building square footage is 454,944. You know, Palliser does occupy one of the areas, that's 40,383. Mr. Neufeld's there shared some information with viewers about this property.
well, and I'm familiar with the property.
Yeah, so,
I've
okay.
inspected it, so. So 1155 at 450 a square foot.
Yeah.
Right? So, and in fact, we're both using that lease,
Yeah, okay.
right? 1750 Inkster, where does the 517 come from per square foot?
From the mailer, from the income expense mailer that they provided
I'm
us.
quite certain.
It's in our database as being a good rent. I did not get the opportunity to check that one, just let me, I do have lots of information, but, I got 1155. Bear with me here, Mr. Borgstrom. do have 1155, but I don't have youngster property.
Okay.
Is that-
And that's fine. Previously was reported as a much lower rent or a smaller space, so were you aware that they expanded the space occupied in this property?
I'm not aware of that.
Do you know what the cost was involved in expanding that space?
I'm not aware of that. So we're talking
And-
today.
Yeah, and so 1370 Sony Place, you're reporting at $4.22 a square foot,
That's correct.
and we're using that rent as well. So, of all of these spaces, you've got a low end of 109,000 square feet, and in fact, you only have one larger than 135,000 square feet.
Yep.
Were there no other large industrial leases in the city that you could look at to compare to a building of this size, which is 387,500 leasable square feet?
No, because usually the bigger ones like MCI, Boeing, New Flyer, they're all owner occupied.
Okay. Now, it's a single occupant building. Is it your opinion that there is additional risk associated with a very large single occupant property?
There would be.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Susan, questions?
I have no questions.
Mr. Merritt?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so you're using 416 as you want. All right, I have no questions, and so you can proceed with yours.
Okay. So I have inspected this property, but my inspection was pre-expansion. And so I just want to take you through some of the pictures. At the rear of our brief to start with, starting at page 13. And the pictures at the front are from the original 1978 building. This building also has interior loading docks, the original structure, which has or causes some problems for the building in terms of environmental control and in terms of air quality control within the building. So not just temperature regulation, certainly in the winter months, but also in terms of environmental air issues for staff and so forth. The addition has exterior loading docks, but the interior, the original construction has the interior. So you have some office space in there, warehouse space, nothing out of the ordinary. It's a distribution warehouse, and we have a couple of them up in the area. This one, they actually expanded. You'll recall that they acquired Safeway a number of years ago across Canada. And so business needs necessitated the expansion of the distribution warehouse. And so that's exactly what they did. So starting at, turning back or rolling along to page 22, you'll see there the interior loading docks that I was talking about. The entrance is actually on the south side of the building, and you can see there the shadow of the open door. And you can see there the trailer backing in. Quite clearly interior loading bay space with the problems that I've described. Page 23 and following are the from the 2015 edition. And I included some exterior and interior pictures again. And so the pictures on page 26 and following of the interior, very similar to the other one. You've got reasonable ceiling height because it's a distribution center. We store a lot of dry goods here, which you can see from the pictures, page 29, 30, 31, 32. So it's by and large just a very large, reasonable height, reasonable wall height utilized for distribution warehouse purposes. You'll see there the breakdown on page 3. We show a breakdown of the original structure where we had 36,348 square feet of coolers and freezers. There were also 34,400 square feet of truck dock. This is area that you can't use as a warehouse. It's effectively wasted space in here. So you've got when you add it all in, it's approaching 10% of the building area. It isn't usable as warehouse space. Okay? I don't think that the city's model accounts for that. And the assessor's quite correct with the 2,000. It was actually constructed in 13. We showed it as 15 in our pictures. 122,080 square feet with a large wall, high wall height of 43 feet for their distribution purposes. We agree with the assessor's area, the assessor's leasable area at 387,500 square feet. I also note, and as you look at the picture on the bottom of page 3, you'll see there, a little difficult to make out with the blue highlighting, but you'll see the addition at the bottom of the picture on the south end of the site. The rest of the site sort of runs along on the exterior sort of outline of the building. The overall land to building ratio is 1.87. This is substandard for industrial expectations today. They make it work in part because of the the interior loading bays, 34,400 square feet. But certainly any investor in the market would have that expectation of a higher land building ratio. The other thing that's interesting to note, modern construction standards, and you'll see that in the addition that they put on, do not utilize interior loading bays because of all of the issues associated with them. The issues with climate control, the issues with air quality. So they just, it's a feature of this building that is that is obsolete from a design perspective and not implemented in modern designs. So we took a look at the market, and I came up with 10 rental comparables. 680 Mission was for a lease on 122,675. That's a single occupant property. St. Boniface at $4 a square foot. 770 Pandora was a 2013 lease at $375. 1750 Inkster we show at $312. That was the previously reported rent. Now, at a recent hearing, an assessor provided me with information. The actual rent roll, and that lease is actually $525 a square foot, so I'm not really certain where 517 square foot comes from. But I believe, based on the evidence that the assessor provided me, 525 is the right number on that one. 1155 is one that the assessor is using, also $450 a square foot. Show 2 leases on Buried. They are older properties, they are newer. One is one is the original lease is Device and Transport. This lease is has a base year for operating costs, so it's not a true net lease. We've converted based on those base years, so the net rent works out to $4.51 a square foot, but that also includes the non-recoverable expense of leasing additional lands for Device and Transport across on a separate roll from the 20 Buried. We lease those lands, the owner leases those lands from the Winnipeg Airport Support to provide additional lands for Bison Transport. The $2 rent is a relatively newer lease in this property. That's the Park and Fly. So it's all interior warehouse space, $2 a square foot. 1370 square Sony is what the assessor is also showing. We've also showed 11 Pulse here. This is actually Fountain Tire's distribution warehouse. This is a much newer property, built in 1990, subject property partially in 2013, partially older than that. The overall age of the property, according to the city of Winnipeg, is 1990. So it's, in terms of the variant age, similar, and they're using $5 a square foot. Now, Folks is in my view, a much superior area in terms of the development in there. 630 Kernahan, that's the same lease that the assessor is referring to. We show it based on the lease information from Palliser, and this was sent to me a couple of years ago from them. it is Trican Tire Distributors, and we show here the lease escalations, and as I indicated, it starts off at $375. There are escalations every other year, and the lease that was in place as of the reference date, reported by Kernahan on the rent roll to me at least, it's $4.15 a square foot. That's the rent we've included here. The last one is Hunter Tire in 170 Furniture Park. It's subdivided off from what was the manufacturing. $4.35 a square foot with a rent step in January of 2018. So based on all of that, and given the subject property's very large size, our view is that economies of scale should apply in considering the appropriate rent to apply. The department has applied for $16 a square foot. We're suggesting $3.75 a square foot overall, based just on sheer size. We've applied a 4% vacancy allowance here. Now, I've already gone over the Johnson report statistics. I've already gone over the issues in this area of the city with respect to the development in Rosser and the other areas immediately close proximity. I think the department has applied 3.5%. We think that 4% is more appropriate when you consider collection loss as well. Again, non-recoverable expenses for the reasons canvassed, 7%. The department has applied a 6.5% rate. Now, this is a very large single occupant building with low land to building ratio. With those two factors, and in our capitalization rate study, we cite those two factors as additional risk factors that should be considered. So we think 7.25% more accurately reflects what would be a market view of this property. The other item that I skipped over on page 8, at $3.75 a square foot, that also includes a consideration of the 34,400 square feet of what I view as unusable indoor loading dock areas. So we've made an adjustment for size, and we've made an adjustment for that as well in selecting 325. Show the mathematics on page 10, and again, that should be non-recoverable there. 4% vacancy, 375 shortfall, 7.25% cap rate. We're looking for a reduction now to $17,093,093 rounded. I believe that that is the information we wanted to provide.
Okay, questions, Mr. Crowe?
Okay. Mr. Boardroom, you would know this better than I would. What percentage of industrial warehouse space has a wall height of greater than 30 feet?
Actually, I don't know.
No? Okay.
But I can tell you that a wall height of 43 feet is a little unusual. The example, bear with me for a moment here. Let me give you the example of 1370 Sony. Now, the section of the building, it was built in stages, the original section, then an addition in the 80s. That used to be the largest distribution warehouse in Western Canada. It was the Sand Store, Red Apple distribution store. That had a very sophisticated distribution system within the warehouse area. It turns out that that warehouse area was also air conditioned and had floor-to-wall, floor-to-ceiling windows in there. Mr. Cohen treated his employees very well. But that space, as a distribution center, only has 34-foot wall height. When you look at all of the new construction going on out in Rosser, anything over 35 feet is really unusual. That I would view something in the range of 35 feet to be sort of the top-end standard. So typical is going to be between 30-35 feet.
So the 43 feet was built for the new section, I'm assuming?
I believe that that is the wall height of the new section.
Okay.
And in fact...
So would that be a premium to do that?
Actually, no, I don't think that the market is going to recognize that, because you need specialized equipment to access the racking that's going to be in there, and the pallets up that high. You're gonna need very specialized equipment to get out there. Normal forklifts aren't gonna do it.
Yeah.
So when you take a look at the, page 33, you'll see there that that's confirmation that the entire 2013 expansion has a 43-foot wall height.
Okay.
The balance of the property built in 1978 has 30-foot wall height.
Okay.
And so that's more what you would typically expect to find, but my view is that the market wouldn't recognize that extra wall height because for most people it's going to be unusable.
Okay. But it would be an asset though, because it saves you from using floor space in another area. You'd have to have a larger footprint to make up for that.
Let me say it again in a different way. So when you get clear ceiling heights or wall heights of 35 feet and up,
Yeah.
you need different equipment to access. Number one, you need structurally different racking. The higher you go, you're going to need much different racking. You're going to need a different system to access the pallets that high. Normal forklifts aren't going to do it. And so generally speaking, my view is that the market isn't going to recognize that. On a cost approach, and actually you can look at it from an income approach too, that would be a super adequacy. Just like fully air conditioning in a warehouse space, the market doesn't expect that. The market isn't necessarily going to recognize that. And that's my view of that extra wall height.
But the point is, there is equipment available to accommodate that because as land becomes scarce, more people are building up higher than they are actually spreading out.
Actually, no. When you look at the development in Roster,
Okay.
that's what you'll find is like 30 to 35 foot wall heights. That's what you're typically going to find in modern construction. When you look in the Innsbrook area inside the city of Winnipeg, built in the 2000s, 2010, 12 timeframe, exactly the same thing. Where you're going to find 30, 32, 34 foot wall heights. 43 is very specific to a particular need. The market, because these other properties aren't built to those, I'll call it excessive wall heights, my view is that there is no market demand for it, and so the market wouldn't recognize any premium for that.
Okay. The truck dock of 34,000 square feet that you mentioned here, I just want to confirm that's not in your square footage allowance, right?
It is.
It is? And so, well, our square footage is exactly the same though?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's unleasable, I'm saying that it's interior space, but you can't use it for warehouse space.
Okay.
It's like an interior loading dock.
But wouldn't that not be a positive feature for
Actually, no, it's a detriment, and that's why you don't see it.
then why did they do it then?
So let me finish. That was when the building was originally constructed, and there are other examples of interior loading docks, 1450 Mountain, for example, which at one time was actually owned by Palliser, also has interior loading docks, also built in the 70s. It's I don't want to call it a relic, but it's a design feature that is no longer utilized in modern industrial warehouse design. It causes problems with climate control, and it causes problems with air quality because of the presence of trucks in those areas. You open up the loading doors, you have issues with air quality in there for the workers in these spaces. And so this is not a modern design feature, and it's actually a detriment to have it.
So protecting people from the exterior elements is detrimental? And the truck loading companies, when truck drivers are coming in and out, how could that be negative?
Well, I would view diesel fumes as hazardous.
Yeah, but there is ventilation systems out.
It's an issue, and it's a design feature that is not present in designs. As you look at buildings built in the, certainly in the 90s, 2000s, and onward, interior loading bays just don't exist for all of those reasons.
Why are you using a 4% vacancy instead of 3.5% vacancy?
Well, we've canvassed the Johnson report already in our cap rate study. It's not vacancy, it's vacancy and collection loss.
Okay.
So bad debts and unrecoverable, sorry, that's a bad word, rents that can't be collected when a tenant moves out unexpectedly. And with consideration, in particular in this area, we actually gave serious consideration to using a higher vacancy rate in this area than just 4%, but we've applied 4% for this.
What was the value in 2018?
I have no idea.
Did you know if he took it to the municipal board or not?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you, no other questions.
Okay, Ron, any questions?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Susan, questions?
No questions.
Okay, I have no questions then. Okay, thank you for that.
I'm not even sure I did it in 18.
What's that?
I'm not even sure I did it in 18, I have no idea. Ken Hutchings?
Yep. Ken Hutchins. Okay, you can proceed with Ken Hutchins.
File number is 193741. Roll number is 140643, 40400. Ted Hutchings. Assessed value that we have is $10,770,000. Inventory warehouse built in 1974. Wall height is 25 feet. M2 zoning. We have a leasable area of 177,494. Turning over to page 2, just a bit better picture of what the property looks like, the subject property looks like when they were looking to lease out the space with regards to Colliers. Page 3 shows just overview shots of with regards to it. Page 4 just shows some more detailed information with regards to property features. 177,742 square feet, modern office development, high bay warehouse suitable for a variety of uses. Ceiling height is 24 feet. Dock and grade loading, 600 amp service, 600 volt, phase 3 electrical services. Interior rail, precast concrete construction, automated lighting. Building can be demised into different potential suites, a lot of flexibility. Looks like a nice quality office space. Page 5 from the advertisement shows some pictures of it. So you can see it's a combination of warehouse space and office space. You know, it looks quite modern and not very dated, at least with regards to the flooring and the kitchen area. Property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out income and expense mailers. They do have a book rent listed here. What we have here, there was a sale for this property in 2000 for $4 million. Subject property is 177,494. Rent per square foot is $463. Using potential rent of $821,797. We have vacancy of 3.5%. Effective gross income of $493,043. Expenses at 2%. Shortfall of $375. Come up with a net operating income of $753,877. 7% cap rate. Comes up with $10,770,000. My leases on the back are exactly the same as the previous ones due to the nature of the property. And I do have a range there from 422 to 815. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, questions?
Actually, just a couple. So the rental comparables on page 8 are exactly as used in the previous property.
That is correct.
So all of the questions asked there can apply here.
Yes.
Thank you. And again, the subject property is a large single occupant property, correct?
Correct.
And from your, and I appreciate that you've not inspected it, but from the review of your pictures included here, you conclude that the property is not suitable for multi-tenant occupancy, correct?
Well, that would conflict what I have in my information here. Because if you look at page 4, they said that it's capable of having potential unit sizes. So my guess is, with not going into the building, that there is some flexibility there to demise it accordingly. But this is just on the sales listing. So they have potential size here. And so my guess is that there is some flexibility.
So, to your knowledge, this property in all of its history has always been a single occupant property?
Well, it's Pratt's, right? And so, I think it's Pratt's.
No,
It's not. Oh, no, that one is. Okay. Well, it's big, it's Big Freight, right? It's a trucking company. Yeah, okay. So, I'm not familiar with the property,
Okay.
the past history. It's, the book read in place. The mailer says that it seems to be flexible enough for multi-tenants. I haven't inspected it.
So you're referring to page 4, this is not a mailer, is it?
No, this is an advertisement for lease.
And do you know when this was dated?
I can't remember if I found it on the website or if it was in our database. So I'm not too sure.
Well, would it be fair to say that the current owner of this property has and continues to occupy the entire property?
I don't have a relationship with the current owner. This is my first time being exposed to it. Big Freight's a large company, you know, so I'm assuming that they've been there for a long period of time. I'm not too sure, but
So as you're looking at the picture, so we went here, so as we take a look at your page 2, that's 2-story office space, right? And as we look at the overhead, is it reasonable to assume on your page 3 that office space is located in the southeast corner, or the southeast corner section, a section of the southeast corner of the building? Or you're not sure?
I'm not too, so when you say southeast or southwest, where the trucks are parked or where the cars are parked?
Let's take a look at page
Because I'm looking at here.
Let's take a look at page 4. Perhaps this is clearer for you. You'll see there on the left-hand side of the picture, the office space.
Yep.
Okay, now this is actually looking west, right?
Yeah, well, northwest, southwest.
So in the southeast corner, there's a section of 2-story office space, right?
Well, looking at the footprint of it, loading dock, existing building. Okay. I haven't been in this building, so when it comes to particulars, I can't answer stuff.
And that's fair. And so you indicated that there's a potential for subdivision, and that was based on page 4. But as you look at the layout of this building, any potential subdivision would have 0 office space in it, right?
There's always potential to put office space in. You can build office space anywhere. You know, the Hollister furniture example is a perfect example of that, right?
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, questions?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Susan?
I have none.
So you used one rate for the entire building, right? 463 you used?
Yep.
Now just I guess going back to the previous property, it was a larger property, but you subdivided into smaller areas, but you didn't use 463 in any of the smaller areas. Why are you using 463 here?
Well, the Soaks property that we just looked at, I think our rent was $375, and that was
16.
What's that?
$4.16.
For the, yeah, so there would be a
Overall
premium
coverage. Yeah.
for, you know, a bit lesser space.
So it's just economies of scale.
Exactly.
Much newer space,
What's that?
much newer space on it.
On which one? On?
Let's not get into debate, I'm
Sorry,
asking
yeah.
you
My
questions.
apologies.
Okay, so that's, and then you just use, no, cap rate of 7%, is because again of the age of it?
What's that? Well, yeah, because cap rate's always based on the age, you know, size and year built. Well, that's the same thing. Yeah, so age, well, two important factors, there's age and size.
Okay. So this is an older property, but the other one was bigger, which would imply a higher cap rate. I'm just trying to play things off in my mind, let's say.
Well, that's what we always try doing, right? So say, for example, when we're looking at our cap rate study on the smaller properties here, none of them are smaller, but usually the smaller cap rates are 6%. And so the bigger properties are around 7%.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. You can proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. So I have personally inspected this property, although it was a number of years ago. I'm going to tell you that the reported wall height in the property is 25 feet, that it was built in 74, so we have a building that is again approaching 45 years as of the reference date, and certainly as of the year of assessment is over that. It also has a sort of an odd configuration with the building and the way the site is laid out, and there is a low land building ratio of about 2:1. Again, that's lower than the market would typically expect. We show a slightly clearer picture in the bottom of page 4 of the office space we're talking about. There is not a large amount of office space. It's not notably insignificant, but it's not overly large either. So it does occupy that corner of the building. It is 2 stories based on my previous inspection. We show the pictures of the interior, pages 13 and 14, and there you'll see just sort of some of the office space. You'll see there the old baseboard, sort of rad heating in the office space. 15, the top of 15, you'll see some of the office space, desks, no cubicles. Page 15, some of the distribution warehouse. There are, as you can see in these pictures, fluorescent lighting and not the metal halide or halogen that you would typically expect. So that is a feature that you would expect to have some impact on the rental rate that you can achieve in this property. There is some interior, and I would call them, it's not unusual to find it in warehouse space, but it's more like a loading office. It's not quality space. It is a desk contained within walls for people to work at, dealing with the trucks coming in and going and so forth. The balance of the pictures just show that this is in fact a distribution warehouse. And again, with 25-foot wall height, exterior loading box. So we took a look at the rental comparables. These are in fact, as with the assessor, the same rental comparables that were used in the previous property. This property is somewhat older, but in this case, we've selected $4 a square foot. This is still 177,000, give or take, square feet in size. $4 a square foot we think is appropriate. And so that's the rate that we selected. 4% vacancy for the reasons that we canvassed on the last property. 75 shortfall, 7% non-recovered. Cap rate in this place, we've got a 45-year-old property, large, single occupant with a low land building ratio. 7.5% certainly falls within B range, and if something of this size would fall into the other type of property in the cap rate study, it would certainly be higher than 7.5%. So we think that 7.5 is the right number to apply in terms of cap rate. And on page 10, we go through the mathematics again. We're looking for a reduction to $8,538,000 based on all of that. That is what we're going to present on this property.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, for sure. On page 13 of your cap rate study,
Nope, back into that.
yep. Well, I just want to make sure that I understand this properly.
Okay.
We're looking at the northwest quadrant, you know, and you have three comparables on Keewatin, Sherwin Road, and Logan. Those cap rates are within your range, like the subject property is 177, these ones are from 21,000 to 256.
Yeah, but the slate portfolio, the properties are also in the northwest quadrant of the city.
Okay, well, yeah, and for sure, but the point is, you know, but our cap rate study on the slate portfolio is like 6.5%, not 7.87.
I'm happy to look at it in evidence, but I've never seen that.
Well, you've been exposed to it in other hearings, I'm sure.
I've never seen a city cap rate calculation of the slate portfolio,
Fair enough.
including all of the sale prices that we show within the package.
So you're asking for 7.5%, yet your information here shows a cap rate below 7%.
Actually, no. Again, we go
For the
back
first three, I'm talking about the first three, because slate portfolio sales, there's a fundamental difference about that, and so I'm not prepared to discuss it right now because we want to save time. No, in fairness, Mr. Boardroom, you and I don't want to be here talking about the slate portfolio the whole day.
We've gone over the cap rate, I've permitted
Okay,
sufficient discussion on cap rate, let's.
so then ask this question then. For 1800 Inkster, the previous property, used a cap rate of 7.25%,
Right.
which is significantly higher or bigger than the subject property that we're looking at right
It also
now.
has a 1990 effective date.
Okay, which is 10 years difference, which isn't 12. Well, 1976, that's 14 years difference. 76 to 1990 is 14 years. Just curious.
So 14 years is about one-third of its, roughly one-third of its economic or age length.
You also, I had a question with regards to your buys and lease that you have on on Berry.
Yep.
Did you get that information from the income expense mailer?
Yes.
Okay. So, did you want to actually go through the math with me on this? Because you're clean, just wait, because I want a 125. Because when you're using,
So they have a reported face rent at $5.65 a square foot.
yeah,
They have a base year of $19.99 for operating costs only. That's $1.14 a square foot that are absorbed by the landlord. And you deduct that from $5.65, and you come up with $4.51 a square foot on a net basis.
for sure.
Now, beyond that, and I alluded to it, that lease rate required the owner of that property as a non-recoverable expense to lease adjacent lands from the Winnipeg Airports Authority to provide parking for Bison's trailers. And if you look at an overhead picture of it, you'll see that quite clearly behind the building at 820 Berry.
Is that in your brief?
Well, you asked about the lease,
Okay.
and I'm telling you I'm familiar with it.
Okay. And so, and which property is and so the $2 rent is for the car park?
As I indicated on
I'm
the previous
just
one. it's-
wondering why we're going over this again.
You know what? You know why? Because Mr. Hardin, what happened is that I had those comparables. I didn't have the mailer in my other presentation. Like, so when we did 1800 Inkster,
Yeah.
I had printed this up because it was a flag for me, so that's why I brought it up.
Okay.
As I indicated on the other property, it is the park and fly space.
Okay. So, okay, and is that on, and that's not on the lease then, is it? Because I couldn't find it on the lease for the property, so that's why I'm asking. Or maybe I'm missing it because I have the red roll here,
So, well,
unless it's something
so
different.
let me just tell you that this lease commenced and they moved in September of 16. I'm not quite sure why you wouldn't have it, but we took that from the income and expense mailers. It was a new tenant at that time with a net lease at $2 per square foot. No office space in there that I'm aware of, or certainly nothing significant, but it's
So-
$2 per square foot.
Could you show me that? Because I don't have it on the 2017 income and expense mailer.
Well, deal with that.
Okay, fair enough.
Off-
No other questions, thank you.
Okay. Questions, I guess, of Mr. Bergstrom. Rob?
Just one question. Make a correction on page number 9. It's got there, the overall square footage, Brad, the 3,025? I don't know where that came from.
Oh, that's,
Okay.
yeah, that's,
So-
okay, that's a
so,
fixed thing, so it's,
yeah.
yeah,
okay.
so it should read.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's,
Leasable 177,
okay.
494.
I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
And in our calculations, we use 177, 220.
Yeah. I have no other questions.
Okay. Susan?
No questions?
I have no questions. I guess given that you have to plug the meter, it'd be a good time to break.
Wait, please.
Let's have our lunch break now then. Thanks, Michelle. We'll resume the hearing, reconvene. Next property on the agenda is 101 Hutchings. And I see that we have a non-compliance on there, so. On the non-compliance.
If and I'm gonna try and circumvent this to try and shorten it up, if we don't dispute that the city sent the questionnaire, we don't dispute that the city received it, or sorry, the owner received it, but there are some mitigating circumstances here. The owner of this company passed away a few months before these questionnaires went out, and you can appreciate that there was a considerable amount of turmoil and upheaval within this company, and it got set aside amongst this turmoil. And so what we're asking this board to do in this one case, and I believe that they have complied previously. I don't believe that compliance has been an issue on this property in past appeals. And so what we're asking this board to do is to exercise some administrative discretion in these unusual circumstances and not apply the penalty for this 1 year of oversight with these unusual circumstances.
Okay, and on that,
Our position is that we need to ask for non-compliance, but if you look at page 2 of my brief, you know, there's a history of non-compliance. We did eventually get it, so if you look on page 2, you know, I'm asking for non-compliance. So I'm showing you 2017 mailers, but you could also notice in 2017, 2015, we had to send out registered letters. We got the 2015 mailer, and the same thing that happened in 2013.
And so the questionnaires were provided.
They
So
were,
this is-
yeah, exactly, it's just the second time around.
Yeah.
But I did not check with 2011, 2009, so there's a history of us having to go that extra mile with regards to non-compliance.
well, the only issue is did they comply or not?
Yeah, exactly, and all I'm saying is that, you know, there's just a history, and Mr. Borgstrom told me about the circumstances, but, you know.
Okay, Ron, do you have questions?
I don't have any questions. No.
No,
Susan?
no.
Okay,
You want us to step out of the room for a second?
well, I just wanted to ask you,
Okay.
given the legislation decisions that basically say as soon as the city can
establish it. If you want to look at it from a really technical perspective, the owner didn't receive it because he had passed away. That's it. And so basically, I'm here just essentially, they are throwing themselves on the mercy of the board. I've never run into a circumstance like this before. And it is unusual. And what they are asking is that you exercise some administrative discretion in these unusual circumstances.
Okay, when did the owner die?
He died, he passed away in February. Now, this is not a small company. I was a good year. This company, so just to give you a little background, right, the company employs 550 staff. Aside from this one, they have other properties. They have 600,000 square feet of warehousing. So there was a lot of, I'm not going to use the word confusion, but there was a lot of disruption and upheaval around that time. So,
Family-run company?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's take a minute and discuss it, so if you give us the room.
We'll step you up.
What? Yeah. Okay, given the unusual circumstances in this instance, we'll deny the non-co-op, so you can proceed with your evidence.
If I might, again, to speed up the process, the only disagreements on this particular case are the non-recoverable expenses and the cap rate.
Okay.
And I'm happy to have the assessor go through his brief, but
So you're using the same NOIs then?
no.
Oh, wait,
No, because, well, his NOI is different than
same
ours, right?
grossing,
Well, actually,
same rents,
I believe it's the same.
rents and cap?
748, 529 is what we applied. So the
Same
340,
rents.
yeah, sorry, so the 340 a square foot that you've applied to the area equates to 357 on the gross floor area. We're using exactly the same gross potential income.
So there's no reason for us to,
So then,
Non-recoverable cap rate, that's it.
well, there's also small vacancy issue.
Well,
Same as my third.
well, I've asked that question already, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, so just,
so do you want me to read it then?
yeah, you gotta read in the roll number. and all
Okay.
that.
File number 193568, roll number 140642, 60600. Assessed value that we have for this property is $9,699,000. We're asking that the assessed value be confirmed. The building has been built throughout 1974 to 1977. We have a leasable area of 220,390 square feet. And our gross potential income is the same at 748,529, And as agreed upon before, we're not going to go through the arguments with regards to the shortfall and the cap rate. So I'd like to ask for the value to be confirmed, that's $9,699,000.
Okay. Any questions?
I do not.
Susan, questions of the assessor?
No questions.
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and just your cap rate is based on the size and age?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Consistent with the other ones.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly, so we are seeking 7% on the non-recoverables, 4% vacancy, so a slight bump from the assessor's model rate, and cap rate for exactly the same reasons as on the previous one. We have a bigger building here, at 220,000 square feet. Same vintage, 1970, so a 7.5 cap rate we think is appropriate, so we're looking for reduction to $8,407,000 based on all of that.
Okay, questions, Mr.?
Just one question. You know what you asked for in the 2018?
I have no idea.
No clue? Okay. Yeah, ironically enough, it was exactly the same.
I have no idea.
$8,470,000. So my next question is there's been no changes to the market value of this property from 2000?
Okay, so, and generally speaking, in all of these appeals, when we do our reviews, my starting point is never the previous assessment. It is what is the market evidence telling us this cycle, and based on the market evidence this cycle, this is our opinion.
No other questions?
Okay. Questions, Mr. Merritt?
I don't think I have any, thank you.
Susan?
No, I don't think I have any.
Okay, and I won't break the pattern, so. 26 Mandalay Road.
Might I just take 30 seconds to chat with the assessor?
Sure. I'll give you 30 seconds, just like a minute.
So then we'll be coming to this is what's being announced. That's the rental rate on the larger areas.
Okay.
So
So this was, it's Coca-Cola, is it 1,700 each?
No, it's not.
Which 7? Okay, I don't think.
It should
I'm
be.
just asking, yeah, I
Yes.
know that. Okay.
So there's discrepancy in your.
Okay,
You get back to me later.
okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Which is why we changed ours, right? So. 26 Mandalay?
Yes.
Yeah, 26 Mandalay, you can proceed, Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, I just wanted to check Mr. Borsh's information here. So I used it as a comparable here? No, I didn't use that as a comparable.
You did in previous briefs,
Okay,
and I found
Oh,
the information,
okay.
so.
okay, no problem, okay. File number is 193646. Roll number is 140641 20500. Address is 26 Mandalay Warehouse. Years built were between 1976 and 77. Wall heights between 17 and 19 feet high. M2 zoning. We have a leasable area of 52,582. On page 2, I got some pictures of the subject property. I've never been in this building before. It's just located on the north side of Inkster, just off Mandalay. Page 3 shows a couple more shots of the building, per se. Property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out the income and expense mailer. Is this one here enough, Mr. Harden? Is this sufficient? Because when it's print screens, I want to make sure, or are you looking for more information than this? Because I included the rent roll and I included the one-page summary. And this is just for moving forward, Brad,
One page summary.
on page 4.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
That's sufficient? Okay.
Yeah.
It's just when it's owner occupied, I'll just do like a little print screen of it, but you know, but for this one here, I included the whole thing.
Yeah,
I just want to get that right for moving forward.
okay.
Okay. Anyways, so on page 5, you'll notice some mailers that we have here. And what's interesting to note is if you look at the leather factory, that lease was signed in 2008. You know, Maples Academy Dance Floor, which is an M40, signed 2010. You know, next one 2009. This is like the initial periods that they've been signed. On the next page, Prestige Vinyl, signed in 2008. Then on the bottom page here, W178, 2010, 2003, 1999, 2010, 2010, 2004. So when you're looking at this and looking at the rental rate that we're using, so our blended rate is $4.99. Our rental rate is $6.49 or $6.50. So when you're dealing with a lot of leases, whereby 8 of the 14 leases were signed in 2014, we're saying that's not indicative of market conditions or market rents. So to me, that was an important part to mention that. And once again, I just showed the picture there. Page 6 shows just a breakdown of some of the leases that I've shown here, right? Showing the value of the rents, you know, 2010, 2009, 2004. So the value of rents that we have is from $425 all the way to $725, which is significantly less than the $649 that we have, but it's part of the fact that a lot of these are older leases. Looking at page 7 now, we have a leasable area of 52,582, potential rent of $341,499, using vacancy at 3.5%, expenses and shortfall of 2% to 3.75. We come up with a net effective net operating income of $316,055, using a cap rate of 7%. That's how we came up with the $4.515 million of property. On page 8, I'm showing a series of rents that are all in the neighborhood. They're all properties that are similar to a Flex Warehouse. The range of rents that I have here are showing there are lower rents. I'm not going to dispute that, you know, but the point is they're a lot closer to the $650 that we have here. They're all located in the Inkster Industrial Park. Our 7% cap rate study is in tune with the industrial multi-tenanted B at 5.5 to 9.8, and we're at 7. So we feel comfortable with regards to that. Standard 3.5% vacancy rate that we use for all industrial properties, and that concludes my presentation.
Any questions?
Just a couple. The information that you show on your page 4 and 5,
Yep.
this is from an electronic submission, that was in response to the 16-1 request.
With regards to income expense.
Yeah, they didn't fill out the paper version, it's the computerized version.
Yep.
And on the computerized version, you don't have a field for move-in date, correct?
Well, we have a lease start date.
I understand that, but there's a difference between a lease start date and a move-in date, right?
Are you talking free rent?
Okay, so let me ask the question again.
Okay.
There is no field to enter a move-in date, right?
Our forms show a lease start date and a lease end date.
Okay, and there is no field to enter a step-up rent, correct?
I don't see that here, no.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, Ron, any questions of the assessor?
No, thank you.
Susan?
You would say that these are all industrial use, no retail mixed in there that you know of?
Well, you could almost argue, like looking at the rent roll lease, like Maples Academy Dance Studio, is that retail? You know, so looking at these, you know, Great Canadian Trading Company, my guess is that company here probably sells as a grocery store. Mr. Boardroom may know that better than I do. Prestige Vinyl, that's a storage, it says it's storage, so I'm not familiar with this. So they are industrial in nature, but there may be some retail.
Okay, thank you, that's my question.
Okay, and I have no questions, so you can proceed.
Thank you. So I just want to go over the physical description really quickly on our page 3. This property, the lands are developed with 2 separate distinct buildings. One was built in 1976, one was built in 1977. The 76 building has a wall height of 19 feet. And so when you consider the structural supports necessary, the trusses necessary to support the roof deck, you're going to be looking at something in the range of 17-foot clear ceiling. Similarly with the other building, that's a 17-foot wall height, so you're talking about even lower yet, something in the range of 15 feet. For a 77 building as a flex warehouse, that is considered substandard, and certainly inferior in terms of modern industrial standards. The other thing is that this land-to-building ratio is on the low side at about 2.5 to 1. Typically, you would expect to find something in the range of 4 to 1, give or take. Sometimes higher, sometimes lower, but this is certainly 2.5 is very low. Now, we took a look at the rental rates in here on page 7, and you'll see there that our lease start dates differ from the assessors. We combed through previous submissions and different information. We actually got in contact with the owner and got rent rolls for the analysis, and there you will see the actual lease start dates. Those are different than move-in dates. These are the actual lease start dates, so when they renew a lease, that's when you'll see these different start dates. You'll also see in there that there are 2 of the rents that are actually stepped rents as you go through there. So all of these leases, including the month-to-month leases, are at market with respect to the month-to-month leases. If the owner could actually achieve a higher rent, they could turf the tenant with a month's notice and rent it out at higher rent. They can't achieve that in here given the physical characteristics and its age. The 2 adjustments that we did make were on the George Wakefield Foods. Those are gross rents. We converted them down to net rents at $5.83 a square foot. So the city has applied $6.49 a square foot overall. Based on the actual rents in place, we think that $5.29 a square foot is appropriate. Again, a difference in the vacancy rate, 3.5% versus 4%. Shortfall, or sorry, the non-recovered expenses at 7%. This is a building, again, mid-70s vintage, so approaching 45 years in age. It has a low land building ratio, and it's got very low wall height. One is 19-foot wall height, one is 17-foot wall height. We think, based on all of that, 7.5 is the right cap rate. So based on all of that, the mathematics are shown on page 9. We're looking for a reduction to $3,212,000. Thank you.
Questions?
So, with regards to that, is there any sort of updated information that we could have with regards to lease
Well,
dates?
you have to go back and look at the previous years. You can't look at a single year to make a determination as to when leases started. So that's what we did. We went back and for this property, that's how the information was assembled. It's no different than the exercise we go through frequently. It takes a lot of time, but it's a step you got to go through. You can't make the assumption, and particularly in the case where they submit electronically, all of the fields that you would want the information for aren't on there. For example, as you look at the, when you look at the paper INEs that come back, the fields there are different than what you enter for the computerized responses, online responses. And so you get more detailed information there. We had to go back and actually reconcile a number of different years to figure out when these leases were renewed.
No other questions?
Okay, Ron, questions?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Susan?
I have none.
Okay, I have none. So thank you for that.
We'll go on now.
1:15.
Before we start, can I just ask one question, just for clarification?
Sure.
When I asked about the slate portfolio, Mr. Borgstrom had stated that he never received any information.
That's not true.
Okay, what did you say again? I just want to make sure that I
We
clarified.
had confirmed with the purchaser, actually with the VP of the
Okay.
purchaser, that all of those sales were in fact, that all of those sales were valid, that all of the sales happened, and were,
Okay.
that was the acquisition of the slate portfolio,
Okay,
all of those properties.
okay.
And
And
that
so,
was, and to be clear, I wasn't involved in that communication, that was Rod Slutter,
okay,
directly with the VP from Maryland.
okay. And do you know how many sales are part of that cap rate study that was used?
All of the ones that we show
Okay.
on there. So let me just take you back real quick.
Sorry, guys, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
because I spoke with one of my colleagues at the office and I just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that.
So as you look at the capitalization rate study, and actually, the assessor never presented any rebuttal to our cap rates, but we do have some sort of rebuttal which actually very clearly shows the slate portfolio. If he keeps asking about it, I'm happy to present it.
Okay. And, how many-
But to be clear, all of the sales that we show on ours
okay,
are valid. We have made the adjustment for the land leases that I talked about, and that's what drove the cap rate down to 7.87%. But all of the properties we show on this page, excluding the McGilvery property, that's what was acquired by Narland, and that's the cap rate that was derived from that.
can I just see that for 1 second? I just
Why
want
don't I
to,
just hand it out?
yeah, I just want to count the
With
sales.
your permission, it's,
I just want to count it.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, so.
It's, oh, sorry. I'll give you these. Sorry, my bad. So as you're looking through this, it's,
Thank you.
I've included in here a printout from the slate portfolio which shows some of the
Sure.
addresses which the department has previously indicated weren't part of the sale, but they do in fact show up on the Narland website. And so, there's one for each file as well.
Do you come from beginning to end, Kathleen, or
For me?
for all
Yes.
of them on the docket?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they are on here, and I know that that Slate did not report one of the sales, at least one of the sales. I think that that's because the sale was on leased land, so it wasn't a full ownership. They might have showed it up in a different section of the reporting. In any event, we've confirmed, Altus has confirmed with Narland that the sales that we show on the last page, and this is the revised cap rate that we're talking about for the slate portfolio, these are all of the properties involved in that sale.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask that. That has conflicted the information that we've had. That has conflicted.
It's not in conflict with information that I presented previously.
Okay, that's fine. It's just, our position has been stated in the past. I just wanted to clarify this. Thank you.
So let me just ask one question.
Yeah.
Are all these portfolio sales?
They're all, you see, the interesting thing about
This
this.
is one
Company.
portfolio sale of a number of properties.
No.
Yes, between Slate and Narland. And we have the email confirmation from Narland of that. Now, I understand
I'm
that the
sorry.
department has trouble getting answers out of the vendor, and that the city has been told, not by us, by another consultant, to quit asking questions. I don't know why. But I can tell you that from our end, we've confirmed with the purchaser that all of the sales we show on this rebuttal, in fact, happened. As a single transaction, is our information.
Being mindful of time, I have rebuttal information here that goes into great detail with regards to the slate portfolio sale that contradicts what Mr. Borgstrom's presenting here.
We're just going around and around.
Well, it's just that I had asked the question and,
Well, give us your
no,
sir rebuttal.
No,
No,
it's,
that's the
no,
rebuttal to which ours is the SIR rebuttal.
yeah, and we never talked about it
This is-
before, just,
This is an issue that the city has brought up before. We've presented our SIR rebuttal previously, and in our SIR rebuttal,
what you can do is you can start on,
this is nothing new, and I've seen this information
Yeah.
before.
It's just-
so you can start on page 6. On page 6 is the information.
So this is,
11%.
no, I'm just looking. So this is for a different docket?
Yes, this is for a document,
Yeah.
see, that's why I was clarification, because at the previous,
Yeah.
when I'd asked the question beforehand, I asked the question, and maybe I misinterpreted this, is that you hadn't received any information with regards to the city of Winnipeg's position at a previous hearing.
Well, I did this hearing, so I was.
Yeah, well, that's why I was asking about the contradiction, right? And so with that being said, if you look at the going quickly, two
The
different.
sixth thing is going quickly, okay?
Yeah, I know. But I'm being mindful. So there was Slate Office REIT, there was Slate Management Corporation. What has happened, there are two different sales. If you look at the mailers that went out, the one that we developed our cap rate on was $516,495. If you look at the brief provided by Altus, their square footage is 665,000 square feet, using that $47 million sale. Page 7 shows information about the sale, using 12 sales at $47 million, and this total square footage of 516,000, not the 665 that's listed on the Altus brief. Page 8 shows the same 516 of all the sales that had taken place. So these are information that's been sent out, that's on the public documents on their websites. We have page 11 referencing, a Collier's report referencing the sale on the very last paragraph.
To be clear, that references the news release on that sale.
That's, what happened here is that looked at a square footage of 516,000 square feet, not 665,000 square feet, at $47 million. That has a significant impact on the cap rate. Page 12 shows, the industrial portfolio, 12 sales, $47 million on this page here.
Perhaps that shows why these sort of sales are not reliable for.
Yeah, and I
Their
understand that.
average cap
I
After the
just,
assessor is done, I want to go through our survey vote again to be absolutely clear about what we're talking about here.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay?
yeah,
You're good?
yeah, it's just, I'm
So
mindful of
as we
that.
go through our survey vote again, this is the same survey vote I believe that I presented on October the 8th. And you'll notice within the assessor's rebuttal evidence, they also talk about the Richards sale. We have removed that. I did the research. I agree that there was common ownership as between the individual that had it originally and the holding company. That's why it was removed from our study. As I indicated earlier, 2 of these sales were on leased lands. I don't know why Slate didn't report them, other than that wasn't ownership of 100% of the interest. That they owned the buildings and not the underlying lands, which is why we included the land leases as a non-recovered expense. I can tell you that we have email confirmation from the Vice President of Marlin that all of these sales were part of the same transaction from Slate at the same time. I understand that the city has troubles, but we don't rely solely on news releases. When you have questions arising, you need to make further investigations, and that's exactly what we did. It's exactly what the city has not done here.
Okay,
And
so,
in fact, when you go through this rebuttal, you'll see some of the properties that Mr. Froelich is suggesting did not sell, but they do appear now on the Narland website. That is evidence that they were part of the
yeah, let's
transaction.
get back to the evidence on this property. Where were we?
115 Plymouth, I think.
Is that?
115 Plymouth.
Yeah.
That's all right.
We've gone one more
Yeah,
step
it's,
around
you know,
this.
and I apologize, it's just, I heard something that Brad said, and I wanted clarification on that, so thank you.
For 115 Plymouth, I believe,
File number
yes.
192961. Roll number is 140644 70000. Assessed value that we have is $4,166,000. Industrial warehouse, built, 1970s, 1973 to 1977. Wall heights vary between 10 feet and 28 feet. We have a leasable area of 46,645. Page 2 shows the pictures of what we have here. Page 3 shows an overhead picture of this. And page 4 shows that it's, that they have been compliant with regards to filling out income and expense mailers. It is owner occupied. And that's what they provided us here. Page 5, storage warehouse. We have a market rent of $6.75 on 46,645, coming up with a potential rent of $314,854, using 3.5% vacancy, expenses of 2% shortfall of $375, come up with a net operating income of $291,635. We're also using a 7% cap rate on this property, and we come up with a value of $4,166,000. I've taken warehouses that are similar to the subject property on Burroughs, Hutching, Church, and Mountain, and Inkster. We have a series of rents from $550 to $675. And that concludes my formal presentation.
Okay, questions?
Just a couple. If you take a look at your page 6. The first two of your rental comparables are significantly newer than the second.
Well, but they're there, yeah.
That's a kind of a yes or no,
Yeah.
right? Yes?
Within 15
You'll
years,
give
yes.
the answer he wants to give.
Okay. The first two rental comparables are significantly newer than
Yeah.
than the subject.
Yep.
And as we look at your 5 rental comparables, only one actually is as high as $675 a square foot,
That's correct.
and that's the model rent according
Yep.
to the subject. But even according to your rental comparables, it could be as low as $550.
Yep.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, Susan, questions?
And just the second building, is that a two-story? Am I looking at this correctly? There's two different distinct buildings here?
I'm not even looking. That's my guess is because the second story is because that's where the 10-foot ceilings would be. On the second story.
So there is a second story?
Yep. Well, but here's the interesting thing. It says that it's only one story here on our roll here, but it looks, and the point is I've never been to this property, so that space could be straight warehouse space. But the thing is, if you look on here though,
Do you use a footprint? You just use a footprint for your rental?
I just use the footprint for the rental.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Merritt?
Yeah, just one question, Mr. Pollock, owner occupied building?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's
Actually, I do have the footprint here of the building here. Just bear with me for a sec.
Well, that's okay, as long as it was in the leasable area that you have up here on the income.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not showing, and I'm not showing the second floor.
Okay, you can
It's
proceed.
fine, thank you.
The assessor is correct, it is, in his answer, this is an owner-occupied property, so we took a look at rental comparables All of them are in the northwest quadrant, other than the one on 70 Furniture Park. That, the 351 rent there is a conversion from the gross rent of $610 a square foot. When we take a look at the rental comparables, there's a range, even if you want to exclude Furniture Park, between $4.05 and $5.95, based on those. And my search was filtered by an age grouping and a size grouping. It's not a selective list. This is what we have given those sort of search parameters. You can see there are a number of stepped rents included in there from the original lease dates. And so based on all of those, we think that 575 is closer, and actually I'd even suggest that that's closer based on the assessor's rental comparables as well. 675 does not seem to be supported by the market evidence. Difference, again, slight in the vacancy rate. Shortfall is consistent with the city. Non-recovered expenses at 7% again. And in this case, we think that while the subject property is lower, the land building ratio is okay, the wall height is okay, so 7.25% is the rate that we applied in this case. It differs from the 7.5 for those reasons in terms of land building ratio and land. This isn't a large, quote-unquote, single occupant. So go through the math on page 9, and we're looking for a reduction to $3,206,000.
And the city,
Questions?
Yeah. Has the property sold recently?
I have no idea.
Okay. I forgot to mention this. So you're seeking a value of $3,206,000, is that correct?
That's our value by the credit approach.
Yeah, so the property since January, so if you look at page 4 of my brief, property sold for $3,200,000. So you're implying that the property has only gone up $6,000 in 5 years?
Well, I don't know the details of the sale. I don't know if they occupied the property, the current owner occupied the property at the time of sale. I don't know if there were financing considerations, and more than that, and you'll be aware of this from our municipal board experience not so long ago. The municipal board has almost exclusively taken the position that you cannot ever rely on a single sale of the property. If it was,
We have, Mr. Berkshire, we haven't got the order yet though, so how can you make such a comment?
Well, let's not get into it.
No,
Something
well,
that's not even in evidence before us.
So,
Yeah, I understand.
so to finish, if I may, while I don't dispute that the property transacted in 2013, if it was to come onto the market April 1st, 2018, based on the parameters or the approach to value that we typically use for this property, which is not the direct comparison approach, this is what our opinion of value is based on all the current market conditions.
I have no other questions.
Okay, Mr. Merritt, questions?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
I have none.
Okay, let's move on then to 1372 Mount.
Property that we're looking at is file number 19-3049. Roll number is 140416-42500. We have assessed value of $2,667,000. Two premises built in 1988. Wall height is between 20 and 22 square feet. We have a leasable area of 29,247. Page 2 shows some pictures of the subject property, one from the east, one from the west. The bottom of 2 is facing eastward. Page number 3 shows some general overview shots of the property, just where it's located at in the Inkster Industrial Park, right on Mountain, right this side of Benthalp. Property owner has been compliant with filling out income and expense mailer information. Well, this mailer's combined. One of the things that we talk about in the place, and I just included it this time, was with regards to, if you look on page 5, when we talk about revenue, we talk about recoverable expenses. There is a management recovery expense there shown of $33,727. The year to date at $44,218. And if we look further down here, management, I thought I saw management here. So recoverable waste services. I guess it's just all combined. But there is no property management fees. At the very bottom of the list here, you have property management fees of $3,727,000. And then for the year, it's $44,218. So major company, Green Valley Management, we've had one of these properties here before. The full management fee is being actually recovered. So when I went through my presentation, we talked about why we excluded 5% management fee, because that's true to what we say here. It's an expense, and it's fully recoverable. We need to be fair and equitable to everyone, and so that's part of the reason why we went through this procedure. What I've done here is on page 6, I just show the 2 portions of the rent here, showing the 6. So what happens is that the property on Mountain here, the 2 of them that I've shown here, it's at $695 and $565 as the base rents here. We're using $644 and $338. So we're being within the market rents here. Leasable area is 29,247. Vacancies at 3.5%, expenses at 2%, overall cap rate at 6.5 because it's a slightly smaller property. We come up with a value of $2,667,000. Here I'm showing the subject property leases here at the $695, and here's my list of comparables. Ranging from 10,000 square feet to 26,000 square feet. Built 77, 89, 89, 84, 87, 90, 77. I'm showing rents here that are from $6.50 to $8. Another one at $7.96. All within the similar period of time. There's also a sale of this property here that took place. October 3rd, 2013, it sold for $3.2 million, or $2.3 million, pardon me, and our assessed value is $2.6 million. So when we're looking at the incomes that we're using, we're looking at the cap rates, and we talked about that 6.5% cap rate. Well, in Altus's study that they showed cap rates that were similar to this property, similar to this age, that were under 7%. That concludes my formal presentation.
Questions?
Just a couple. And so you made reference in your presentation of your evidence with respect to property management fees being recovered, correct?
Yep.
So let's take a look down at the bottom of your page 5, and then you'll see a header, non-recoverable expenses.
Yep.
And if you go over to your page 6, you'll see a fairly extensive list of expenses that are not recovered from tenants, right?
Yep.
You know what that totals?
Well, it says $22,426.
That's the current actual for the month. What does the year-to-date actual show?
186,716. No, 238, 153.
Right. And
But
if
if
you
look at the, okay.
Let me ask the question. So if you take out the mortgage interest, you know what that totals up to?
Well, we could do the math here quickly. So 238 minus 138.
Yeah.
188, I think it says.
Yeah, this way.
It's roughly $50,000.
Yep.
And that's about 4.8%, not 2%, right?
Okay.
As a one-year snapshot?
Yeah, but there's some other expenses here that wouldn't normally be included though.
But these are all, well, not included, so these are all expenses necessary for the operation of this property that are not recovered or recoverable from tenants, right?
But some of these expenses are not directly attributed to the building, they're attributed to Green Valley Management.
Which ones?
Well, I'm just looking at this, like, you know, I'm just wondering, what's this administration management fee of this $10,000? What's this administration conveyance fee? Like, we don't know what these are.
So the
That's
asset,
like 40%.
right. It's fair to say that you haven't investigated, correct?
I'm just saying is that when we looked at the new, let me answer the question here. We're looking, we do provide a shortfall, but when it comes to the 5% management fee, it is fully recovered by the tenant.
Right. And so you keep calling it a 5% management fee. We are referring to a non-recoverable expense, right? And so as you look at these non-recoverable expenses, let me come back to the question that was posed to you
Okay.
and ask you, is it fair to say that you did not investigate any of these non-recovered expenses?
No, but if I'm looking at it right now, so we've talked about $50,000. We have $24,000 in leasing commissions, and we have another $20,000 out of $45,000. So that's $45,000.
So let me-
So in reality, it's only $5,000 in non-recoverables.
So let me ask you the question for the third time. It's fair to say that you did not investigate any of these non-recovered expenses, correct?
Well, I'm looking at the information here right
I'm
now.
asking whether you investigated.
I've answered your question, Mr. Bookstrom.
I have no further questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Burns?
Yes, Mr. Frolick, the previous property is also in the industrial area, and it was on,
Plymouth.
yes, and we used a 7% cap rate.
Yep.
This one here is 6.5, so, but I noticed that the age is different.
And that's the reason why.
And that's the reason? And that's the only reason?
The previous one was slightly larger, but I think the majority of the reason is based on age.
And I see that there's just a slight difference in regards to gross revenues. It's okay, we haven't dealt with that information yet, so, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Susan,
No questions.
okay, you can proceed.
Thank you. So we took a look at the property. This is a rental property we're introducing. We show the rents in place in the property on page 7. Unit 1372 was previously leased with, and I have inspected this property previously, with a lease running to 2012, and then the tenant been overheld until August of 2015, at which time it became vacant for a period of time. And it was vacant running from September 1st of 2015 until January 1st of 2017. So you'll see there, and I'll get into the vacancy in a moment. The combined rental rates, arm's length, you'll see there that the unit 55 was a stepped rent at $565 a square foot, and so our calculation of the rents legally collectible is $625 a square foot. That's a difference of about 16 cents a square foot from the city based on their model. The escalation previously for unit 55 was at $475 a square foot. We have annual escalations on that lease, so every year the rent goes up, and as of the reference date of 2018, the rent is $565 a square foot. So stepped rents annually from the time the lease commenced in 2011. Vacancy, you'll see there at the bottom of the page in 2015, based on the area, singular, it's a 2-unit structure. 11.52 for 15, 46.08 for 16. The problem with 2016 is that it only went up to April 1st for the previous reference date. So we weren't able to consider that elevated vacancy rate after that. In 2017, up to the reference date of April 1st of 18, it's 0%. But when you look at that average over that time, it's 14.4%. We think that that's an indication that we should give a slight bump to the vacancy allocation. And this is something that we answered earlier. So here we have recognized a slightly higher vacancy rate due to that issue at 5%. If it's 0 next time, it'll be reduced. You know, if there's a vacancy issue arising in there again, then we will make that adjustment at that time. We think that 5% is the appropriate rate to apply. The other difference again is the cap rate, 6.5 versus our view at 7%. Based on all of the evidence previously provided. So we go through the mathematics on page 9, and we're looking for a reduction based on all of that to $2,234,000. And I have included in the rear of our submission, page 12 and following. This is from my inspection in November 2011 of this property. It's what you would expect to find in terms of warehouse space. There is a bit of a showroom at the front of the space. The shoulder was on page 15, some office space, and what's effectively a motor desk at the front as you walk in. It's pretty standard industrial stuff. We think the reduction should be to 2.234 million.
Questions, Mr. Philip?
Yeah. Mr. Brookstrom, what was the vacancy for this property in 2013?
In 2013?
Yep.
I have no idea.
Okay. How about in 2012, 2011, 2010?
So the information within our evidence we show on page 7, and there I took a look at 15, 16, 17, right up to the reference date, not after the reference date.
Good. Okay. So if it had 0% vacancy in those years that I mentioned from, from 13, 12, 11, 10, that would have no bearing in your evaluation process?
Well, it would certainly affect the overall average. I mean, if you would consider that, and I haven't gone through the mathematics, I suspect it would still be higher than 5%.
But currently it's,
So
is
let's go through
it
the
currently
math.
100% occupied?
As of the reference date, yes.
Okay. Okay. So, in part of your presentation earlier on today, you're saying that cap rates should be higher because of all these influences taking place with Centerport and whatnot, that,
That's one of the factors that we considered.
yeah. But it just seems to me that you're only taking little glimpses and not looking at a longer time horizon with regards to the rents.
Well, really, you don't need to look any further than the vacancy rate in here in 15 and 16, right?
Okay.
You have a tenant that was overholding, you have a space that was offered for lease, knowing that the tenant was going to be leaving. You couldn't lease the space up, and it ended up being vacant for at least 15 months after that. Well, not half the space, but a significant portion of the space within this property.
But during the reference area, it was at 0% vacancy.
As of the reference date,
Yep.
it was 0%.
Which is actually 15, which is almost equal. So at 15%, for 15 months, it's at 0% vacancy, yet, and for the other opposite period of time, it had a higher vacancy. That was fine.
I'm not sure I heard a question.
Yep, no problem. And you put no reference into the sale price of this property? No valuation? Okay.
No,
So,
I
okay.
gave no weight to the sale price.
No,
Again,
it's okay.
we don't know the terms of the sale, whether it was
Okay.
beneficial financing given to the purchaser.
Okay.
And as I referenced, there are at least 10 decisions of the municipal board that I presented in evidence at that hearing we were
Yeah.
talking about, indicating that you do not rely, the board does not rely on a single sale.
But they do consider appraisal reports and mortgages and financing, do they not?
I don't think I've referred to that in my agreements.
No, I'm just, but you're only showing one element of the argument.
Actually, well, if you want to ask about the appraisal reports, the municipal board does not permit either the production or the introduction of appraisal reports without the presence of the appraiser. They will allow the production of factual components of those reports, but not the opinions contained therein.
So a status, a title of $2.3 million is nothing.
I'm not disputing that that was the sale transaction.
Okay, no other questions?
Okay, Susan, questions?
I have no questions.
Ron, questions?
I just have one. Mr. Broxham, there's a picture on page 2. Is that gravel in front? Or is
No.
that behind, or?
And so it's an odd property, right? So if you look
Yeah.
at page 3, you'll see an overhead shot there.
Yes.
So the top picture that you're looking at there is actually on the left-hand side. And the bottom picture that you see there is on the right-hand side of the picture.
Okay.
And so I don't believe, and I'm stretching my memory, I think it was probably asphalt and not gravel, but I'm stretching my memory here.
Okay, but if you look at my pictures on page 3, to me it does seem like cement from 2018, like that.
It would surprise me if it was all concrete. The expense of paving that amount of space for truck traffic is exorbitant. Typically, you're gonna find asphalt.
To me, it looks like concrete.
Well, it's paved anyhow, one way or
Yeah.
another.
I don't believe there's gravel in answer to your question.
Okay, I thank you.
I've already asked you, Susan.
I have
Okay. So let's go on to our last property, 1400 Eighth Street. Okay.
File number 193371. Roll number is 140637996600. The value that we have is $12,574,000. We have this as an inventory warehouse. 1 stories, 5 different premises. Years built are between 1964 and 2008. We have wall heights ranging from 12 to 24 feet. We have a land area of 1.367,000. We have a land to building ratio of 11.91. When I was going through my analysis of this property, I was thinking about applying for an increase, but the point is, it's just, I don't want to be overzealous with regards to what an argument could be made for the land area to be even higher than what we have it assessed at. Page 2 shows pictures of Inkster Boulevard. This rhymer has been here since me growing up, played soccer since the 70s, because I remember there used to be soccer stadiums right behind here on Fife and whatnot, that I remember always driving by this. Anyways, facing east, so page 2 and 3 shows some pictures. Page 4 shows a portion of the vacant land that we have. So from Church and Shepherd facing north towards the building on Inkster. Pictures that we have here. And this, on page 5, we have Miller's looking at west. So looking at this parcel of land with regards to being surplus, it's just, you got lots of portions here that can or cannot be used, right? So if you look at the bottom of page 5, there's no reason to believe why this bottom portion couldn't be developed. Even if you looked at the other portion of this, so if we're looking at a part of the building here that's just, if I'm on the building, if I'm a church going towards Inkster, going north, there's another building here, so there's potential for development there. And there's an open space there that really couldn't really be developed that much. But the point is, in the assessment department's opinion, there is excess land here that could get developed and subdivided. What we're looking at is 2018, we're looking at some more pictures here. And there is the 2008 building addition that took place. What we have here is that we have the property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out the income and expense mailer information here. No sales history. What we're looking at here is we're looking at, this is a truck warehouse. We have a blended rate of $6.77 for this property. The variety of square footages here. The potential rent is $890,000, $150, 3.5% vacancy, 2% expenses, shortfall of 3.75. Coming up with a net operating income of $824,000, $318,000. We're using a 7% cap rate here. The rent comparables that I have are similar to the other ones that we've used in the past on page 9. And on page 10, what I've done is I've accumulated some of the value. Oh, pardon me, I'm overzealous here. We have the additional land value on the bottom. So when we have the cap rate of $824,000, $318,000 at 7%, we come up with a capitalized value of $11,775,000. We've valued the additional land at $800,000. So if you're using like a 4-to-1 ratio for this property, which is a standard, so we've got 133,314 times 4 equals $533,000, 530,000 square feet, minus 167,826 gives us 396,000 square feet of additional land. That's in excess of the requirements of using a 4-to-1 ratio. So we valued this additional land at essentially $2 a square foot. So we're actually being very generous on that. So then what I've done here is on page 10, and I apologize for being a little bit mad. On page 10, what I've shown is I've shown some comparable land sales of properties that have sold on Innsbrook, on Fife, on Burroughs, and in Hutchings. The ranges are, at the time of sale, range from $4.64 to $8.68 a square foot. And so the excess land that we've charged here, and you can almost argue some of it surplus land can be redeveloped, is at $2 a square foot, so that's being more than fair. What I've done is I've shown some pictures of what I have here on page 11 for 165 Innsbrook that are taking place. Another property on Innsbrook. Number 3 at 1196 Fife. And all the sale prices are listed there. So comparable 2 sold for $464 at the time of sale. Comparable 3 is $529. Comparable 4 is at $8.68. And the important thing to realize as well is because a lot of times there are arguments made about contaminated land and, you know, can't be developed, can't be used. Well, it's known that comparable 5 was a contaminated parcel of land, and it sold for $6.89 a square foot. So that concludes my formal presentation.
Any questions, Mr. Brookson?
There's a few, thank you. On your page 1, you show the actual years built, 1964 to 2008, right?
Yep.
But you show the effective years built as the same. Is the city, or has the city not assigned an effective year built to this property?
Our effective rate hasn't changed, actually. It's actually 1965.
1965?
That's what based on my research that I found here when I looked it up, it seemed to be 1965.
Thank you. You show on your page 7 there, now this is not the computerized response, it was actually a paper response to the request for information
That is correct.
made under section 16.1.
Yep.
And you see there a lease.
Yep.
Now, did you make any investigations with respect to that lease?
You know what? No, I did not. Because, you know, I find,
No.
because,
Okay.
you know, I find it hard to believe that this property's been owned by Reiner Irish for so long, yet they've been leasing it for so long. So that's just my general comment. But if you look at the rent there, it works out to $652, if we do the math.
Did you have the opportunity to examine previous income and expense questionnaires on the property?
I just looked at the 2017.
Fair enough. So if we take a look on your page 8, you show there that this property, in terms of the department's model, is modeled as a TRW or a transportation warehouse.
Yep.
Are any of your rental comparables you show on page 9 the same type of property?
No, they're not.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fullock, they give a civic address for the subject property of 1400 Inkster Boulevard. So I'm just looking at all the pictures.
Yep.
So you've determined that there's excess land,
Yep.
okay, but it's all over the place, is it not? Or,
Well,
you know, like, I mean, you give it the address of 1400 Inkster,
Yeah.
so that would be like their mailing address or,
Yeah.
but do they get, I'm just trying to decipher, you know, like your first page there with, I guess, the office and the sidewalk going into it.
Yep.
Is that is probably along, yeah, along Inkster.
Yep.
So, and then below is what portion is that?
Okay, I think it actually looks better, if we look back, if you look at page 5 and page 6.
Yeah, okay.
So that gives us a good overview of it, right?
Yeah.
So that north portion where we see that sidewalk and everything like that,
Yeah.
you can't really do anything with that.
No,
You know what I mean? That's a non-issue.
okay,
But when I look at the southern portion of the lot, you know,
Yeah.
we got a one building, so if we look at the corner of Milner and Church, you got a building here, separate roll number, nice square
yeah, but
shape.
isn't that over to the right-hand side? There's no building
No,
on the left?
exactly, so what I'm saying though, is you could easily subdivide and sell that parcel off
Okay.
as a separate flex warehouse or a warehouse in the neighborhood.
Now, what is that used for right now? You don't know?
I have no, well, if you look at page 4, at the bottom of page 4, it's just empty space.
Yeah,
So what I'm saying is that there's that potential there with regards to the value, right? There's nothing to prevent someone from selling that off and developing it.
other than storage.
Yeah, well, but even right now, they had, you know, even Reimer hasn't spent the time to put a road in.
Okay, that's good enough.
So that was a part of the process behind that.
Okay,
And so that's why I was sort of torn with you. I didn't want to be overzealous, but there's huge value there.
yeah. All right, I thank you.
You indicate construction between 1964 and 2008. What was the square footage constructed in 2008?
And well, what we have here, we have 6, 9, and 6 is 50,000 square feet.
For 2008?
Yeah, that was built in 2008, 2009.
My next question on your land.
You know what? Correct me if I'm wrong. I apologize. Sorry. 6,000 square feet were only built in 2009. In 1978, because I was looking, so when you look at our evaluation process, when you look here at number of buildings here, this is probably educational for us as well, because I have to do this, because you wonder, all these buildings have different rents, and so you're wondering, why is this rent so different? So every building number has a number assigned to it. And so when I was pulling out the building numbers, I see 6,000 built in 2009, and the next two that I had was the 3,000 and the 5,800. Those portions were built in 78. So only 6,000 was built in 2009 or 2008. And then also, when you look at that, you'll wonder why one rent's so much higher than the other one. So when you're looking at our income and expense mailer on page number 8, you're wondering why $8.43 is so much higher than the other ones. And that's probably attributed to the fact that it's a newer building.
Just a point of clarification, you said that the information on page 8 was the income and expense mailer?
No, pardon me, it's our income workup. The income and expense mailer is purely shown on page 7.
Okay, and my next question was the land value.
Yep.
Why you being so generously low if your comparable sales are not at $2, they're
Because
$2 and up?
I'm following the guidelines that was assigned by the previous assessor who looked at this file. If it was me looking forward, I would assign a higher value to it, but due to time constraints, which is why I clearly said, which is why I'm asking for it to be confirmed, because to me, I believe this property is underassessed, because there's a huge amount of value in this land.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the excess land, did you determine the 396,000 solely by doing a calculation of what's in excess of the 4-to-1 ratio?
Well, that's what I just did the math, yes.
Okay,
So-
so you can't say that that grass area in the back is the excess land.
Oh, the grass in the front, either the front portion. No, you can't, but the point is, the value that we've assigned for it today is $2. If you look at my comparables, land is significantly higher than $2 a square foot in the quadrant
Yeah,
here.
but we gotta make sure we got appropriate square footage.
So, but even if we take out, like, so if I do the math here, I said approximately 800,000 square feet. So if we go 700, if we say that portion on the northwest corner is worth 100,000 square feet, you know, if I'm going at our land value, which we've used here, at 798 divided by 700. Oh, this way, no, pardon me. I initially said here, bear with me here for 1 sec. So if we take the leasable area of 133, 314 times 4 equals 533 minus 1,367,826 equals 834. So even if you go 730,000, you know, we have a surplus land of 700,000 square feet that are beyond the normal requirements of this property. And the visual of it clearly shows that there's potential and there's value in that. They may hold on to it because we know although value is scarce, and they may want to expand their operations at some point, which is why they have no desire in selling it. But even in a previous life, when I worked with office properties, we've had car dealerships where they've been torn down and rebuilt, and a perfect example of this is the Sunshine Toyota on Templeton and on McPhillips, whereby we had argued and lost on many occasions that, you know, there was land potential for development, and sure thing enough, they tore down the original structure and built a brand new car dealership there. And so when I'm looking at this here, I see value.
Okay, no, I'm just wondering, because to me, you should be able to identify which is excess and not just.
Well, okay, so the part which is, okay, so if we're looking at this, if we're looking at the north, we can't do anything with the northwest portion of that, where the sidewalk is off Inkster Boulevard. Because right across from that, if I remember correctly, wasn't there the Turbo and the Chicken Chef there?
Chicken Chef.
Yeah, okay. So, but if we look at the southernmost portion of Church, you could do a diagonal cross here.
Mm-hmm.
That could be developed. And you could almost make an argument that you could go from Church running, where the line is, from Church running north to Inkster. You could actually make another parcel there that could get developed.
Well, there is a building there, then.
No, that's on the eastern side, but on the western side, there's no building directly behind it. Because you could sort of see that break, so I'm looking at page 5, you could sort of see a break there in the concrete.
Yeah,
So to me, that entire section there, from Shepherd, behind that building, that could all be potential.
Okay. All right, and but you didn't measure it to determine what square footage that was?
No, I didn't ask for an increase on this because I felt that our value was being more than generous.
Mhm. Okay, you can proceed.
Thank you. I'm gonna go through this fairly quickly. This is not rocket science. This property is leased between arm's length landlord, owner, and tenant. I have confirmed this with both the owner and the tenant, separate and apart. It is an arm's length lease between unrelated parties. This is a lease that has gone up over the years. And the current lease rate in there as of the reference date works out to $6.53 a square foot based on 129,979 square feet. That lease includes all of the buildings and all of the lands. You'll recall that I asked the assessor about trucking, in modeling a trucking use. Trucking facilities require extra lands. And so when you consider this, the model is, as suggested, $677 a square foot, but then they've added on for extra lands. In this case, it's actually leased at $653, including all of the extra lands. And so if we take a look at page 8 of our submission, you'll see there that I lay out those lease details and that the lease actually stepped. And so as of the reference date, this is the rent that it was leased for. And as I've indicated, I checked with the owner. That was my first question when I looked at this property several cycles ago. Is there any relationship between RWC, the owner, and actually it's flagged as Reimer, it's actually YRC as the umbrella, or the company is actually the lessor of the lessee of the property. I have also included 4 rental comparables of rental rates with large land building ratios. Numbers 1 and 2 are both rental comps that the city has introduced in previous hearings. And so you'll see there, 1 is at 722. In Chevrolet with an 11.92 land building ratio. That includes all of the buildings and all of the lands. You'll see also there at 6 Otter, where the city has reported $345 a square foot. Again, almost 33-to-1 land building ratio. That rental rate includes all of the buildings on the site and all of those lands. Included 2 additional ones at 1322 Waverly. That was at once upon a time B&B Rentals. It is now Not Auto. Not Auto paid for their own improvements to make the front office area, but the balance of the property is effectively still warehouse use. And that also has a large land building ratio. And 1870 King Edward, that's occupied by King's Truck and Trailer Repair. And so you'll see there again, this is an arm's length lease at $815 a square foot and a land to building ratio of 785. All of those rents support the actual lease in place. No reason to depart from it. No reason to use a different rent and then try and figure out whether or not there is excess lands. And our submission in a trucking use is that there isn't in this particular case. You'll see there that one example at 6 Otter, almost 33-to-1 land building ratio. 4% vacancy, 375 shortfalls, 7% non-recovered expenses for all of the reasons that we went over previously. In this particular case, and the assessor acknowledged the effective year built of this property as being 1965, based on our cap rate study, that's not going to be lower than an 8% cap rate, and so we've applied 8% to the income stream. We show stabilized on page 10. And so we're looking for a reduction to $9,223,000. I have included at the rear some pictures of the interior of the property from the previous inspection. I'll let you go through it at your leisure, but that's just to give you a flavor of some of the inside of the space. Nothing out of the ordinary. It is in fact a trucking facility, really no different than you find up Route 90 on Brookside, north of Inkster. So, save and accept any questions. That's our submission for this property.
Mr. Trump?
Did you take this property to appeal in 2018?
I don't recall.
So you don't know what the value is?
I have no idea.
Thank you. Is the rent on Chevrier higher than the subject property rents at 11 to 1 building ratio?
On Chevy?
Yeah.
Well, the rents are as they're stated, right? And
Okay.
so some are higher, some are lower.
Yeah. And in terms of quality and location, they would be about the same?
I haven't inspected numbers 1 and 2. Number 3 I've attended, but I haven't actually been inside of the rear buildings. There's actually 4 sections with 3 sort of discrete structures on the property. I've not been inside the rear 2, and I've not been inside the truck and trailer repair in King Edward.
Okay. And do these parcels of land have the same sort of developmental potential as the subject property? Because without pictures, you can't really notice.
Well, you keep talking about development potential, but the calculation of excess or surplus lands, either way you want to describe it, is not a simple mathematical formula. You have situations where, for example, and you handed out the rebuttal on it, 200 Panet Road, where the city had applied excess lands, but it's an odd configuration, the buildings are spread out, there are no excess or surplus land, surplus lands there, so even though the land building ratio was somewhat larger than normal, you couldn't look at it and say, well, that's extra, because number 1, they were utilizing it, number 2, it was an odd configuration. So when you have buildings spread out over the site, it's not a simple mathematical calculation 1 to 4.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's how the model works.
Yeah. But there are a lot of examples where we've seen development potential for land where we never thought was possible. A typical example would be all the apartment blocks being built on the railway lines on Pembina Highway. We never thought those would be able to be used for developmental potential, and they
Well,
proven to be.
and under the new standards, they wouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
There are a revision to the setbacks required because of rail safety, so
Yeah, but
they
there's
would
still a
they would
current
no
right
longer
now.
be allowed.
Yeah, well,
And that's different.
well, there, you know, if
There
there's
are-
if there's a will, there's a way, and if there's motivating, you know, we could look at both sides of the equation. You
There
can
are-
say one thing, I can say another thing.
There are circumstances where I come in here and I agree that there are lands which can be severable and developable, but here we have a circumstance with a lease on the entire site, just like the Mount Allison. That's a lease on the entire site, which includes all of the buildings and all of the lands. So you completely eliminate the necessity of trying to guess at what might be surplus or what might be excess. And there's been no consideration calculation of any development costs associated with that hypothetical subdivision that you mentioned, so.
Well, the point is that it would be a subdivision, it would be one parcel, and it's just one example, and the value that we've assigned to it is very, very low in terms of what the current market conditions are. No other questions?
Okay, Ms. Gifford?
No questions.
Mr. Merritt?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Just one then, on your cap rate, and merging that with your excess land.
Yeah, and we've got a single rent on this property, building and land both.
Yeah, but then shouldn't the cap rate be lower because you got no risk for all this extra land?
How do you mean no risk?
Well, it's vacant land, it's a grass field. Where's your risk in that?
Well, except that, okay, so let us consider then the age of the property, and in all of those years, that has never been developed, there's never been an application for subdivision, it's never built on those lands, and so what's really the market for that? And it is not, I would suggest, the size that the assessor has suggested, are the excess lands here. The lands exist, the site is what it is, but in all of the time since this property was built, and it's been built over in sections over years, there's been no development in that, let's call it the southwest corner. There has never been any development in there, or any interest in development down there.
Yeah. But the land doesn't age. The land's not 1965 vintage.
Sure, and eventually, we may come to a point in time, who knows when, where industrialism dies and best use for that property, and we might develop it for something else. And there are numerous examples of that kind of thing in Boniface Industrial Park. The land sat for years and years and years, and now they've developed a significant portion of it residential.
Yeah. All right, those are my questions. Thank you for this, your presentations, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Michelle's gonna push them out today, right?
With 45 minutes to spare.